Klaus, a Woodville Mage Corps member, froze in stunned silence as those words slammed through the room. "You're fired." Commander Fowl, perched behind his desk, told Klaus to explain himself, and then calm as ice demanded why he didn't get it. A Mage Corps that only fueled healing magic wasn't worth a battlefield. Commander shot him a look full of disdain as Klaus argued back, claiming he'd done more than just heal, that he'd even cooked up brand new spells, and that his healing magic counted as real combat magic. Panic swallowed him as he begged them to let him cling to this life for just one more half year, right up until his little sister Karen graduated from the Knight Academy. The commander's face twisted in disgust as he spat that Klaus was a talentless mage, brimming with resentment, and that Klaus should be thankful he'd even been kept on for his full term. Those savage words hit Klaus hard, snapping his eyes wide and stealing his voice. He rose, spun around, and strode off, while the commander's office door slammed shut behind him, trapping his fate in the echo. As he backed down the corridor, the commander's last raging order slammed through the air. "Get out!" Talentless echoed in his head, and then the memories hit. His parents ripped away by monsters, him and his sister Karen left to fend for themselves, him swallowing fear and joining the Mage Corps so she wouldn't have to suffer, and the bright, laughing joy when they finally got accepted. But now that hope was shattered, and it was all gone. Once the day was done, he stepped into the Corps like it was destiny, standing in front of the whole assembly as they called his name, Klaus Finley, and everyone froze because his magical power wasn't just strong. It was the highest in the Corps' entire history, and the crowd's expectations nearly blew the roof off. They told him to press his hands to a crystal orb, and the whole room held its breath. Would his power unleash deadly black attack magic or fiery red support magic? As he poured his energy in, the orb didn't fade to black or snap to red. It detonated in a blinding burst of golden light, and Commander Fowl froze, so shocked by the color that he couldn't even bring himself to order him to feed more power into the crystal. That overwhelming power finally erupted into 3 brand new magical abilities: healing, ice, and fire. But that potential was a trap. He finally saw the bitter truth. For all his massive magical reserves, the only thing he could actually cast was the most basic healing spell. That order basically doomed his career. Commander Fowl strode in and announced Klaus's assignment to everyone, shocking the other mages to the core because Klaus was being shoved into the infirmary while the commander insisted, loud and proud, that his pay and supplies would still be taken care of. Right after the announcement, he snapped the drab robe at Klaus like it meant nothing. Then the commander sneered that someone this talentless didn't deserve the red or black robes of a real mage, and that plain outfit was basically written proof of his failure. For the next 5 years, that became his life, standing alone by the window, staring into the distance while his memories raged back because he'd busted his tail trying to twist his healing magic into something he could actually fight with, only to have every idea shut down, ignored, buried. No faction would claim him, and even the very place he'd joined with sky-high hopes turned him into an outcast. He burst back into the treatment room and announces his return. Then Tamara, the facility's head, snaps at him with a sharp voice, demanding to know where he's been, ordering him to hurry because an emergency is already unfolding. She yanks his gaze to a patient whose face is wrapped in bandages, and Rindami steps in saying the woman was brutalized by a client at the brothel and left with a savage burn. Even with first aid, he's terrified a scar will stick, and when Klaus sees how bad it really is, he nods and decides he'll try to heal her. He presses his hand to the woman's face, and a glowing magical sigil blooms on his palm as he chants the healing spell. Rindami stares in shock because he's never seen a pattern like this, and Klaus leans into the patient, asking if she can hear him while promising she'll recover completely. When the spell's light finally dies down, he tells the woman she can open her eyes now, then flashes back to all those lonely nights studying, realizing this is the healing magic he created himself. Her eyes blow wide with pure shock as she sees her reflection staring back. She brushes her perfectly restored skin and exhales pure relief, flooding her face as she thanks him. And Klaus just melts into a warm smile, thinking this is the moment he lives for, using his magic to turn everyone's pain into smiles. His smile doesn't last long. Tamara steps in and calls him out to his face, admitting she tried to keep quiet for Commander Fowl, but now there's no denying it. Klaus's healing power beats hers, and right beside them, the patient and Rindami erupt with joy over her miracle recovery. Rindami whips around to face him, eyes dead serious, and demands what kind of magic could have done that in the first place, because her question slams open a buried memory. Commander Fowl from 5 years ago, stuffing himself on luxury and wasting the Corps' money for his own gain while leaving his duties to rot. That memory hits Klaus like a gut punch. Now he finally gets what Commander Fowl meant by him, the useless Corps guy. While Klaus busted his ass, Fowl wasn't leading a mission at all. He was just killing time, pretending to care about the reports and writing it out like a hobby. He whips back toward the treatment room, worry written all over his face, and demands of Tamara why the commander called him in. Tamara yanks his arm tight, frustration blazing across her face, and snaps that she's stayed silent way too long while he got played. Then she warns him that arguing now will only make things worse, just like he's secretly feared because, yeah, they're firing him. As the shock of this news finally sinks in, the patient, now fully healed, drops into a deep bow, thanking him for 5 years of service. And as he stares back, a tired, pained smile flickers across his face, accepting the brutal truth he can't cast his healing magic in these walls anymore. He whips around and heads out again and again. For years, it's just him and Tamara in that crumbling apartment, the only 2 mages in the place, burning through every night with nonstop devotion to keep the treatment room alive and running. He presses on through the silent, moon-drenched streets, a heavy sigh tearing out of him because he really thought his healing magic would finally be seen as indispensable. He finally makes it home, and right away his sister Karen's cheerful voice lights up the moment she greets him, tells him she just came back herself, and says she's already whipping up dinner for them. Her bright smile collides with his grim face as he tells her to sit down. We need to talk. After he lays out everything that happened, he slumps with his head down and begs forgiveness like he's a worthless brother. Then Karen snaps right back, cutting through his self-pity and declaring, none of that is true. Her words slam Klaus's mind backward through the years, back to when he obsessively chased healing magic, used it as an adventurer to bring down fell beasts, and spent day after day treating countless people as their healer. He also clings to every failure, the patients he couldn't rescue. And even so, their families kept thanking him for his efforts right up to the very end. And that memory still crushes him. Seeing the look on his face, Karen snaps that he has nothing to apologize for, swearing no doubt that she's always known he gives it his all. She keeps pushing the idea if his last workplace wasn't right, he should just switch. Klaus only gives a small, quiet nod, but he's still stuck in doubt. Her mind is sprinting with possibilities, and she straight up asks about the guild, then points right at the Black Falcon Guild Hall, telling him he can grab monster subjugation requests with confidence because the guildmaster, Ursel, will have his back. He blurts out his doubts, but she cuts him off in a heartbeat, flashing a bright smile that promises everything's going to be okay. Her smile blooms as she declares with ironclad certainty that her brother is not just strong, he's totally cool. To drive the point home, she declares that she'll personally stand as his witness, and her rock-solid faith leaves Klaus momentarily tongue-tied, a shy blush creeping up his cheeks. He leans into Karen's steady support, watching her tie her hair back, then hearing her vow to grind hard at the Knights Academy and push them to strive together because her encouragement has always been the one thing that keeps him afloat. Even when people sneer that he's talentless and his heart sinks, his thoughts drift straight back to the day after his parents were gone. Karen found him, and that smile of hers has kept saving him ever since. Back in the present, he jumps in and offers to help her in the kitchen. Karen protests that he must be exhausted, but he refuses to back down, insisting he wants to cook with her. Her face lights up with a warm smile as she realizes, in her own thoughts, that he's her son. That calm, happy moment locks his determination in place. He's decided he wants a life full of joy with Karen, and as night settles over their home, he knows exactly what he has to do to make it happen. The very next day, inside the Black Falcon Adventurers Guild, Ursel, standing as guildmaster, snaps into disbelief at the news and fires off questions out loud. Klaus, he snaps his focus to Klaus, sitting across the desk, and Ursel finally owns up to his own mistake because Klaus had only ever used healing magic. Ursel never bothered to check what else he could do. Then Ursel straight up invites Klaus to register with the guild, leaving Klaus staring like he can't believe what he's hearing. Ursel leans in with a wry grin and tells Klaus straight up that the guild runs like a business, then drops the bomb that they already set a special main registration exam just for a troublemaker like him, and yeah, he's taking it. He shoves the document across the desk and says, back then, provisional registration was enough, but now you need main registration to take official requests and prove your skills. Then he points to the paper and adds, this is the form for the exam. Klaus takes it, nods with a steady, I understand, and fires off his thing. Klaus nodded as the guildmaster, Ursel, laid out the deal. This exam was really a de rank request, and the rank Klaus would land on would be locked in only when he came back. With a sharp, determined grin, Klaus confirmed he got it and bolted straight out. Right as he started, he stopped dead, shut his eyes, and clasped his hands like a vow, then flipped the switch to go all out from the very beginning, unleashing regeneration for automatic recovery and stronger power, a limit break to shatter his body's limits, divine awakening plus cellular rejuvenation, and a warm surge of energy rolled out of him. Now his senses went razor sharp as he charged into the thick forest, going after that same fire lizard he'd fought before, trusting his magic detection to pinpoint where it was and to finish the job. Suddenly, a blinding burst of light detonated from deep in the trees, followed by a low, shaking boom like it had just pinpointed something. But once he got a closer look, he froze. Confusion hit him like a wave. His confusion snapped into pure alarm because standing in front of him wasn't a normal fire lizard at all, but a hulking black salamander, a rank A to S monster, and its power smashed through his senses like nothing he'd faced. Even its magic felt like several humans fused into one. Then the terrifying thought hit him. Was it already battling someone right now? The beast's devastating power hit Klaus like a punch below. In the clearing, he stared at the wreckage of its attack adventurers sprawled and beaten, and somehow just one person stood tall, facing what Klaus now realized had to be an S-rank monster. Without hesitation, he lunged into action as the black salamander's strike got stopped dead by something nobody could see. Then Klaus snapped into spellwork, a blazing sigil igniting between his hands, determined to throw his own magic into the mix and yank the creature's attention away from the lone survivor. He steels himself, fists tight, staring down the creature's massive bulk and trusting his healing magic training to carry him through, because right now he charges straight at the beast and slams into the gap. He charges the creature, slamming both palms into its hide, and a glowing magic sigil ignites under his hands. Then he shoves his power straight into its bloodstream, trying to slam its temperature down fast and freeze it from the inside out. Ice explodes across the salamander's body in an instant, then it cracks apart and shatters into frozen pieces. When the icy blast finally dies down, he stays crouched in place, ultimate technique unleashed, extreme freezing blood. He pushes himself up to his feet, wipes the sweat from his brow, and stares at the smoldering, frozen remains of that high-rank monster. Then a wave of relief crashes over him. He did it. His gaze snaps to the last survivor from the previous party, a young woman who just stares, eyes wide and mouth stuck shut. Then he strides up to her, says he's here to grab the proof of what that monster did, and asks her, "Are you hurt?" He shoots her an apology for the scare, then blurts out that he's stuck in the middle of an exam and needs the proof of subjugation, so he asks, straight up, for her permission to take the monster's magic stone, and all the stunned woman can do is let out a tiny gnaw of disbelief. As he turns away, a jolt of clarity hits the woman, and she freezes, staring at his back, wondering if he might be the legendary Magic Emperor, the one no one else has ever been able to find. Right after Klaus storms back to the guild from his Dur-rank registration exam, he's thrown into a whole new problem, a subjugation quest for a fire lizard, then boom! Karen pops up like a jump scare, calling his name, stunned that he's back this fast. He reveals a massive crystal case holding a preserved black salamander's body, then insists it was him who defeated the black salamander, not some fire lizard. And he starts panicking that this mix-up could knock him out of passing. Ursel, the guildmaster, grills Credence and insists, with zero doubt, that this has to be a success. Then he declares Klaus has passed and earns the right to be an S-ranked guild member. Klaus stares at the adventurer rank chart, pointing at himself like he can't believe his own eyes, and asks how on earth he could be S-ranked a tier just beneath the very top. Turns out there are only a handful of SS rank adventurers in the whole country. So, for most people, S rank is the real ceiling. Then he corners Klaus and demands answers, asking how he pulled off defeating an S-rank monster all by himself. She cuts in with a sharp, serious stare, stressing just how massive his feat must be to take down an S-ranked black salamander by himself, and how he still comes back that fast is plain and simple an absolute miracle. He nods and says the test was meant for a lower rank, but the truth is his performance is so brutal that it puts him at S rank in real life. Yeah, it's weird, but the outcome is the only thing that counts. His expression drops like a stone as he scans every detail of the quest. Then the truth hits, it really was for a black salamander, meaning someone fed him a lie on purpose, and he fears the other adventurers already paid the price in a deadly setup. Klaus storms out from the counter and strides alone down a long, silent hallway replaying the cruelty in Magic Core, where they thanked him here, but there they shut him down as talentless and refused to even hear a word he said. Before the guildmaster, Ursel and Karen watched him closely, and Ursel said this guild ran on a whole different set of rules. Klaus flipped through the registration book, then paused, eyes narrowing, as he wondered if Magic Swordsman was really the right label to write down. Ursel said that if someone threw out a vague title like Magic Swordsman, people would get mixed up when picking teams because nobody would know if his red magic was there to back allies up, or if his black magic was built to tear enemies down. While flipping through his book, Ursel said, straight-faced, that this meant Klaus had to be registered a completely different way, and the young adventurer just stood there listening, eyes locked, waiting for the call. He glanced up with a dazzling grin and boldly suggested they just invent a brand new job for him. Then Klaus snapped in surprise, totally thrown by the crazy idea. His shock still hadn't faded when Ursel cleared it up. No hard rules decided what people could be, and he couldn't help but remember how, back when he was out adventuring, even the Magic Swordsman class hadn't existed yet. He threw out an example. Aaron, right now the leader of the Holy Knights, was first just registered as a plain knight. but his holy attribute roared so intensely that it swallowed everything else, stamping his name and forging exactly who he'd become. So Ursula leaned into that logic and realized the blue mantle wasn't just armor, it was healing, and she couldn't shake the question of why any holy knight would carry power like that. Klaus's eyes flickered wider at what it meant. It hit him. His old healing magic really was unheard of for his past role. So Ursula jumped on the moment and pitched a fresh title. Blue Magic Swordsman. Karen immediately backed it up, saying it fit him like a glove. And when that spark of certainty ignited, Klaus nodded, accepting on the spot and officially asking to be registered under his new profession. He stares at his brand new guild card, and pure validation hits him like a wave because after they told him to grab his supplies, he realizes this job he used to see as proof of his failure is now something that's truly his. The moment he steps outside, Karen's bright, cheerful smile hits him, and she practically sprints up to him with her hands clasped tight, congratulating her brother on finally officially joining the guild. Later, back home, he admits he'd dreamed of landing in the S-rank Magic Swordsman division. But with his new title, he can finally handle special requests. Karen brushes off every worry, saying it's only natural for someone with his real power. And then she grins. Blue Magic Swordsman totally sounds awesome. She lights up, telling him this job was made for him alone. Then her steady support hits hard, and he murmurs his thanks, quietly but sincere. To celebrate, they pull up to a table piled high with food, share a heartfelt thanks, and then dig in together. He praises the mouth-watering food, saying Karen always finds time to cook for him even while her studies are piling up. Then he thanks her again for all her kindness. His approval lights a spark in him, and he boldly declares, "I'll cook for you tomorrow." Karen snaps her head up, shocked, and asks, "Wait, are you serious?" Her surprise snaps into full-blown excitement. She practically begs for pork steak, then insists they grab a strawberry tart too, so they can celebrate his triumphant acceptance into the guild the right way. The next morning at Guildhall, Klaus bounds up to the receptionist and flashes a bright, "Good morning," and when she notices his ridiculous high spirits, he laughs and admits it's not just the delicious food fueling him. She smiles and tells him, "Now that you're officially in, the requests have started flooding in," then leans closer to hype him up. "With you on board, this guild's reputation is going to skyrocket fast." He locks eyes with her, determination blazing, a shy blush creeping up his cheeks, then he swears he'll give it everything, especially now that the world has officially recognized his power. His sincerity completely flusters her. She blurts that he really shouldn't say stuff like that with a face like that, because now she's admitting it makes her want to hug you. She snaps herself back together, shoots him an apology for her outburst, then winks and hands him his mission for the day. Only S-rank adventures, and it totally blows him away. The request zeroes in on an adamantite, an insanely tough magical beast with a shell-like armor, brutal defense, and raw physical power found on Crane Mountain, out west of the capital. The adamantite got smashed by Crane Mountain's crushing force, and it finally crumpled in defeat. Klaus stood right there, staring in awe as his magic detection kept leveling up, and he realized he could now sense the rough magical power of an entire country, so he turned back for home. Just as he spins to head out, the ground erupts into violent shaking. He jerks back, thinking, "Quake!" And before he can even finish the thought, a terrifying, unknown magic slams into the world out of nowhere. He finally stood face to face with the source of that insane power, an enormous reptilian beast, its shell rising like a mountain of stone, looming over him so hard it felt like the world was crushing down. When the creature dipped its head, a brutal chill tore through the air, and he spotted those glowing red eyes, realizing in a jolt that this wasn't just any adamantine at all. The beast ripped the air with a deafening roar, and fear crashed over him hard. How was he even supposed to fight something that huge? He felt completely outmatched. It spat out a raging blast of frigid air, instantly icing the ground around him, and he jerked back, teeth chattering from the brutal cold. He stared at the ruins, stunned by the monster's raw power, and in that moment he realized this was his first look at a magical beast, because if he didn't stop it right now, the town nearby would pay the price. Right before he could even think up a plan, the beast detonated forward, its massive body crashing into him with a sickening slam, and somehow, inside that brutal impact, a strange power surged through him like a divine awakening igniting his soul. As his consciousness started slipping away, he saw the creature cocking for another brutal attack, and he knew he had to strike right now or it would be over for good. Kneeling there, he poured every last spark of energy into a high heal spell, slamming his magic circuits wide open to refill his stamina. Then a thunderous surge ripped through him as his hands started to glow. His consciousness started to unravel, the world teetering on the edge of blacking out pure gut-punch panic, like this nightmare was on repeat and he couldn't escape it. Right when his sight started to die, the massive adamantite monster screamed one last soul-ripping roar, then came crashing down and snuffed out its own consciousness for good. He panted hard, wiping sweat off his brow as a wave of relief hit him like a tidal surge. Then he blurted out, half in awe, half in dread, wondering if this was really the sixth time he'd survived this exact moment. The sixth lupus. His eyes locked on the creature's remains. Somehow they'd shrunk to just a tiny scrap of their old size. Yet it was still breathing, and that freaked him out. This could be a deadly unknown species, so he scooped it up and shoved it into his item bag for safekeeping. As he yanked the bag open, the tiny creature got yanked right in with a shocking slurp, and he just stared in disbelief as it vanished completely into the bag's magic space. With the strange beast finally in hand, he raced back to the Falcon's Wing Guild, ready to show Ursel that terrifying, adamantite-like monster, but already wondering where in the world he should spring the reveal. He strode up to the front desk and shouted for Jerry. Then, the moment she turned, he demanded to know if Ursel was free. Jerry apologized for the delay and promised she'd run to get the guildmaster right away. Not long after, Ursel showed up, and for a split second, they all thought Klaus had botched the mission, and come back empty-handed. Klaus started to explain, but Ursel snapped, stunned to the core, asking if he'd really dragged an adamantite back like it was nothing. And in the background, Jerry Muse clocked the truth. This new guy was a whole new kind of headache. With a knowing grin, he explains that an item bag's capacity is ruled by the owner's magical power, so an adamantite would never fit, no matter what you tried, and Klaus goes rigid with shock to. Kneeling Klaus onto his back, he grins and blurts that it's wild Klaus has the magical power to land in a mage's division at all. Then Klaus, totally flustered, snaps, "Okay, where am I supposed to let the creature out?" Ursel snaps back and pushes them to head straight for the plains just beyond the castle walls. Moments later, Klaus drops to one knee, yanks his item bag open, and right as Ursel yells his name, a deep, eerie rumble spills out from inside. From the bag, the creature lunges out. Ursel freezes in pure shock and blurts that it has to be some brand new species of adamantii. Klaus is sweating as he begs him to wait, wondering if any of this could even work. Then Ursel's face turns cold, and he snaps, "Are you talking to me, Klaus?" before declaring that the creature is unmistakably a monster. Then, as it swells into a colossal monster looming behind him, he finally reveals the truth. This isn't just any beast. It's the Holy Guardian Jinbu, summoned by Ouroboros to shield the world from disaster. Somewhere else, a massive stone door in an ancient ruin screeches open, and suddenly you can't ignore the terrifying question: has that long-forgotten seal finally snapped? At the Matto Empire headquarters, Aaron, the leader of the Holy Knights, rushed to Commander Fowl with a nightmare update. Healing magic is failing, recovery is dragging on, and some people can't be healed at all anymore. Fowl just snapped back, annoyed to the bone, "That's not my problem," and stormed off toward the treatment room like it had nothing to do with him. He slumps at his desk, cursing his own jam-packed schedule and grumbling that the red mages are slacking. But right then, everything shatters when a subordinate barges through the doors, yelling that it's an emergency. The man bursts in with his urgent report, and right outside the royal capital, a terrifying horde of monsters is piling up fast. Powell's cold dismissal instantly melts away, and wide-eyed shock takes over as the dire news finally lands. Somewhere way off in the distance, Klaus stares at a massive beast sprawled on the horizon. Then he grins as he checks it himself, right on cue. That towering thing is the holy beast Jinbu. The great beast opens Jinbu, steps forward, and lets loose an ancient, earth-shaking voice, confirming it's one of the holy beasts that guards the world from the looming legends of Ouroboros. Ouroboros ignites a flashback inside Klaus. He whips his head toward the two kids. The girl blurts that her mom used to read her a picture book about the demon emperor, and the boy immediately jumps in saying it was awesome. And then it hits Klaus. He knows that story. The story from that picture book burst through his mind thousands of years ago. Humanity was terrified of monsters, and the heavenly demon emperor charged out to stop the evil dragon. Ouroboros, after a brutal quest, he finally faced his enemy, and the whole memory crashes together with a single scene. A mother reading that exact tale to her kids, their tiny silhouettes trembling under the shadow of the towering dragon. They remember how it all ends. The demon emperor couldn't break the mighty dragon Ouroboros, so he hauled off a smarter plan, sealing it away instead. 4 colossal seals were hammered into the land at the cardinal points, and the 4 holy beasts were sworn to stand watch, guarding them for all eternity. The weight of that legend slammed into his mind. Then the deer-like creature in front of him spoke, its voice crackling with ancient power and confirming it was Jinbu, and Klaus just stood there, eyes blazing with pure disbelief. At the amazement got ripped apart when Ursel's frantic voice screamed, "Why isn't it dead yet?" And Klaus stayed icy calm, saying he was actively cutting off the monster's magic flow. He slammed his hands over the beast and kicked off a forced magic spell, blasting a blazing web of power straight between his palms. And then boom, the creature morphed into a giant turtle. Ursel told them how, when they finally found Jinbu, it was a wreck with those strange red eyes, and the jewel on its forehead was pitch black, he explained. They'd hauled in top-grade magic stones, and that's what brought it back to this point. When he noticed that Jinbu's eyes used to be black, a cold reason clicked into place, and as Ursel started talking, Klaus felt the jolt because if the guildmaster was this rattled, it meant he'd just stumbled into something terrifyingly serious. A deep, soul-shaking realization hit him Jinbu. It was the holy beast that healed his shell. Like it heard his thoughts, the massive turtle coiled its long, snake-like neck out, and its wise eyes locked onto his silent look of grateful relief. He stared in total shock, blurting out that the creature actually spoke, then spun to Ursel, eyes wide as he demanded whether holy beast could talk. Before Ursel could even speak, a voice slammed straight into Klaus's mind. Jinbu, the holy beast confirming it could be heard, then demanding to know who its listener was and asking for their name. He caught on that the voice was talking straight into his head, not just his ears, so he steadied himself and said, "I'm Klaus Finley, Ursel," right beside him, shot a worried look and asked if he was okay. Then Klaus snapped back, "I'm fine, no problem at all." The holy beast threw itself into an apology, blurting that it had to go back because its sister was waiting, then swore that if Klaus was truly its master, it would follow him anywhere right as it talked. Its huge body lit up and collapsed into a tiny, palm-sized turtle, leaving Klaus stunned out of his mind. Ursel stared at the exchange in disbelief because Klaus wasn't just talking. He was genuinely holding a conversation with a holy beast, and she knew this had to be reported ASAP, so she pushed them to race back to the guild. He even told Klaus the holy beast was fine and handed him the duty like it was the greatest trust of his life, with a strange kind of nerves. Klaus swallowed hard and accepted the responsibility. A while later, in that hushed room, the tiny turtle wiggled awake on its pillow and popped its eyes open. It snapped its gaze to Klaus, sitting at a nearby table, now wearing simpler clothes, and the holy beast asked if he was okay, frowning hard when it realized he hadn't eaten a single thing. He cradles the tiny creature and leans in, hanging on every word, as the holy beast, Jinbu, admits it's been panicking over his stomach, something it's never felt before. Then it drops the real bomb. This is the first time its heart has ever been moved like this by a master. He stares down at the creature, a bead of sweat sliding down his temple. As it makes it crystal clear, his voice snaps through to it, only because he's its master. He presses, "So that's the whole reason. The holy beast lets out the truth it's been waiting forever to finally meet someone who can hear its voice, the one and only key to becoming its master." Then it names Klaus Yu. A beat of realization hits, and just like that, Klaus grins and asks, "Does that mean I can call you master all the time?" The creature snaps that it's only ever served one master, and it'll never be able to change that. Then it digs up a brutal memory. It got torn away from that master hundreds of years ago. It hits him like lightning. Turns out they didn't call him master for nothing. He healed it. The holy beast looks back on its old master with pure love, and when Klaus gets hit with that warm, gentle energy, he practically melts, panicking over how this connection is even supposed to work. He snaps the conversation sideways and demands the holy beast explain why it went on that rampage in the first place. The creature snaps into the truth. Ouroboros's seal is shattered, and that surge of power ripped its mind apart. Then it turns worried for Klaus and finally drops the real bombshell. Its sister, one of the four holy beasts, is slumbering deep inside ancient ruins. And it won't be long before she wakes up too, and as it speaks, Klaus's head fills with a chilling vision of a dark, vine-choked entrance leading straight into those ruins. He froze in shock as Jinbu laid out the plan, 4 holy beasts locking into place to the east, west, south, and north, all circling the ancient ruins, and Jinbu himself among them, sharing the same fragile sanity. This shared consciousness was the world's shield, because if the evil dragon ever rose again, monsters would swarm everything and drag the world under their rule, just like Jimbo saw in that picture book. This revelation hit him like a brick, hard and heavy. He was desperate to help Karen, but self-doubt crashed over him fast. He'd only become an adventurer so he could live a calm, peaceful life with her. So what was he supposed to do now? His inner war finally snapped into action. He slammed his fist down, startling the little turtle beast, and he blurted that he wasn't even qualified to be its master because he had a sister to protect. Before he could even finish, Karen exploded into the room, eyes wild, blaring a panic-stricken warning that the Knight Academy was in real danger. A monstrous horde was already barreling toward the outer walls of the royal capital. Jinbu's news hit him like a punch, and he froze for a second. Then Jinbu told him to move, and Karen warned that Ursel was holding the middle of the defensive line. Right then, Klaus cut in to apologize to Jinbu, but still demanded he come too, and the little beast didn't hesitate, hopping straight onto Klaus's shoulder. With his resolve locked in, they sprinted straight into the chaos when a massive stone gate finally gave way and everything went dire. A flood of monsters, goblins, winged beasts, and worse came pouring through the breach, and Ursel and Lorenzo stood at the front of the defenders, holding the line. When they finally reached the scene, they froze, horror hit like a punch. Outside the castle walls, monsters were packed in everywhere, swarming like a living nightmare. Karen choked out, "It's a," while Klaus stared as snarling, grotesque things crushed the defenses all at once. Klaus just stares in stunned silence as Lorenzo shouts his name, and pure relief hits him. Then Ouroboros is there on his shoulder, and suddenly Klaus realizes the chaos isn't random at all. It's Ouroboros doing, right on the money. In the command tent, Aaron, the leader of the Holy Knights, whips around and demands to Ursel, "Who are the newcomers?" Ursel steps in and says, "That's Klaus Finley from the Black Falcon Guild and Karen Finley, a knight in training." Fowl instantly lunges in and snaps that Klaus is useless in all of this, and Klaus is so thrown off that he blurts, "Why did you drag me to the strategy meeting then?" Right next to it, Lorenzo's face twists with pure frustration, glaring at the disrespect aimed at one of his guildmates. He strides in, calls out the foul play, and hits back hard, reminding him that Klaus is an S-rank adventurer, not some one-trick who just heals. Then he whips around to Klaus and says, "I'm starting this fight for you, so first tell me what's really going on." Aaron storms into command and lays out the plan. The capital's troops split into two fronts. One smashes the main monster horde head-on, and the other races to stop a second horde creeping in from the rear, with Klaus holding the line there. Lorenzo's eyes sharpen, wipe out that rear wave, and suddenly the first fight turns way more manageable. Klaus jumps in without hesitation, volunteering to team up with Aaron's troops and handle the boss monsters, and Karen's eyes go wide with shock while Fowl and Lorenzo just stare, completely stunned that he's so confident. After Aaron, leader of the Holy Knights, threw his bold declaration out there, he snapped into command and claimed the capital for him and his squad, while everyone else stayed locked on monster patrol around the city. Then Aaron turned his focus to the unseen Klaus and gave the go-ahead because Klaus had already crushed a black salamander, so now he was free to do whatever he thought was right. He agreed to the terms on the spot, resolve snapping into his face as he gripped the front of his uniform. Ouroboros was watching from his shoulder. Karen cut in instantly, stepping forward and declaring she'd go with him to back him up. Klaus tried to refuse at first, urging her to head back to the city with Ursel, but Karen just stood there with a stubborn, unshakable resolve. She finally caved, agreeing to let her tag along on one strict condition: she'd only serve as a medic, and Karen snapped up his terms without hesitation. Once everything was settled, they rushed to where the holy beast, Jin Bu, was waiting. Klaus strode up and shouted for passage, and that massive turtle-like monster looked like it agreed. Just before they left, Klaus shot a look at the huge line of injured, displaced citizens. Their heavy footfalls thudded through the whole area like a warning. With Karen perched on Jinbu's giant shell and Aaron riding beside them, Klaus suddenly snapped, "Stop!" He planted his hands on the shell, and a glowing magical sigil started to blaze into existence beneath them. From the sigil, a gigantic burst of power tore free Perfect Heal, and it slammed outward in a huge circle, bathing dozens of battered people in warm, gentle life that stitched their injuries back together. His spell slammed into the crowd, and sparks of glowing light rippled through them, stopping everyone cold as stunned silence hit. People could barely wrap their heads around what they'd just seen. One man blinked at his vanished wounds, asking if he'd really been healed. Another stared in awe at the sheer scale of the magic, like, how could it heal so many at once? Even Karen's breath caught. She recognized that familiar glow, then she whispered, "This is unbelievable." Once the healing was finished, he and Karen climbed onto the holy beast Genbu, and the second that massive thing started moving, the whole ground shook. Klaus called out to the people watching, explaining that this was their way to ride out from the crowd. Then one of the men stared as they rolled through the gate, and it hit him like lightning. It was the blue hero. Klaus rode atop the creature, and when Karen caught his eye, she breathed out his name, Klaus Finley. As they charged toward the front lines, the crowd behind them erupted with gratitude, chanting his full name like a prayer. "We're counting on you." In the middle of a wild battlefield where adventurers hack at boar like monsters, a massive gate slams open. Then Klaus bursts out of the darkness, charging forward on the colossal holy beast Genbu Buyakua. He scans the scene with a grim face, seeing the first platoon all but erased. Yet he refuses to lose faith that Ursel and the others will make it out okay. His gaze tightens as he hones his focus, and the truth hits. He finally knows what his priority has to be. While the main fight explodes elsewhere in the forest, the second platoon gets crushed by monsters, and their commander screams for everyone to retreat. From up close, Klaus studies the knight's game plan. He's dodging the possessed and hammering only the demonic beasts. Then a huge shadow creature with piercing eyes barks an order, and the monsters crank their power, turning the battlefield hotter with every command. Right in the middle of the battle, Ursel erupts with a lethal burst of power. He screams the name of his move, Hell's Blood Scythe, and brutal flames explode around him, swallowing the beast's whole while a fellow knight stares in shock. He snaps at his men to stay on guard, saying these monsters don't fear fire. and somehow they're still kicking, watching from a distance. Klaus freezes in shock as Ursel burns them from the inside out, and he can't wrap his head around how someone that powerful could exist in their own country. Shock hits him like lightning. Then this young woman with iron resolve steps straight in front of him, snaps her sword out in a flash, and faces a roaring, bear-like monster as it charges for them. A flash of his sister, Karen, hits Klaus' mind, and he imagines her effortlessly mowing down a swarm of tiny, cat-like creatures. Like that alone could calm him. For a moment, he's convinced he can hand it all to her, and she'll be totally fine. That thought gets wiped out the moment the real danger roars back. Klaus shoots his hands out and hurls a sweeping magic detection spell, and the ground starts to hum as deep echoes spread. He senses monsters deeper in the forest, moving in tight formation, like they're guarding something important. Then the roar hits like the whole forest just explodes, and out of the trees storms a massive, bull-headed monster. Eren spots it instantly, the Horde's boss, the King Minotaur. An SSS rank, he blurts, stunned, because it's way too strong for the Holy Knights to handle by themselves, so he shouts for someone to step up and lead the vanguard. Klaus hears the knight's plea and snaps his focus to his strongest ally. He lays a hand on the holy beast, Jin Bu, and commands it to smash the boss, and the massive creature immediately accepts the mission. The holy beast can move now, so the King Minotaur slams forward at insane speed and brings his massive axe down on Eren, who barely blocks with his sword, the clash blasting shockwaves through the air. The creature slams in hard, its body blazing as it fires off the skill extreme heat. Blood clashing with such brutal force that Klaus gets thrown to the ground. Eren doesn't blink. He swings his blade up and lets the holy cross rip. Right as the knight sets up his holy attack, Klaus suddenly realizes this strike won't land. So he shoots up with fierce resolve and barrels forward, racing past everyone who's still stunned. A sudden jolt snaps Jin Bu, the holy beast, to full attention, and the massive brute stares at Klaus, Eren, and the swordswoman as they stand fearless in front of the towering King Minotaur, like the whole moment yanks up a memory from a time long gone. His mind slips back to a fight from years ago when a younger Klaus charged at another terrifying, stubborn beast, and Jin Bu, the holy beast, starts to understand what a true master really is. He realizes that loving Klaus wasn't enough. If you couldn't protect your people, you didn't deserve that title, though. He probably never said it out loud. He remembers that young man's unshakable stare, always putting everyone else's safety first, throwing himself into the fight no matter what it cost him. In that past moment, Klaus slammed down headfirst and the whole world went quiet for a beat. Jinbu caught the message with just a single thought. So, your Lord Klaus. Then the devastating power hit unleashed in a hushed incantation, forged from extreme ice in his blood. That icy blast didn't hit the enemy at all. It slammed into Jinbu's horn and shattered it in an instant. And in that moment, the holy beast finally understood. You're the one who was my master. As the memory of that old foe crumpling slips away, the world snaps back to the present. King Minotaur lying defeated, trapped in ice, Klaus strides off past the fallen monster, and the holy knights just freeze, staring in stunned silence. Their stunned silence snaps into furious shouts of, "No way!" One knight blurts that Klaus just beat the boss, so all that's left are the weaker monsters. Hearing that, Klaus spins back, cheeks burning, throwing both hands up like, "Wait, hold on." He's sweating like crazy, trying to brush off his jaw-dropping win, insisting it only happened because of their help, because there's no way he could have done it solo. Then he dodges every bit of praise, hands the spotlight to them, and the knights just stare back, soaked in pure admiration. Klaus stood there in the stunned hush as the holy knights erupted in praise, shouting that he was incredible and that they'd never seen anything like it before, while Klaus just blinked, caught off guard by all the nonstop hype. Eren, their leader, strode up to him like a thunderclap awestruck, grateful and confirmed Klaus had actually wiped out the SSS rank King Minotaur. Slicing their losses to the bare minimum with morale exploding, Eren declared they could take on the rest of the threats now, then told Klaus to spill every detail later. So overwhelmed, Klaus could only let out a small, quiet sound. He snapped his hand up and blurted that monsters were still lurking nearby, then claimed he'd use magic detection to scan the area, anything to dodge the next round of questions. When he swept his gaze across the area, his eyes snapped wide, and panic hit him like an alarm. His tracking pushed him straight to a shocking sight. He shouted, "Karen!" and pointed to a clearing where Jambu stood. The holy beast barked for its master, and Eren and the others spun around to find the braided swordswoman looming over two lifeless adventurers. They barreled closer and saw a young man frantically shaking his unconscious partner, begging, "Come on, wake up!" Right behind them! Klaus and Jinbu thundered toward the scene, Klaus shouting her name through panic, "Karen." He dropped to his knees beside the fallen girl, Karen, while the braided swordswoman quickly laid out what happened. Karen had shielded her from a monster's strike, and now poison might be coursing through her. And as the story spilled out, a gentle glow started to pulse from Klaus's hand. The glowing light exploded into a blinding wave of healing energy, swallowing Karen whole while the braided swordswoman stood there, shocked, as Klaus calmly declared she'd fully recovered. And under that surge, Karen's eyes finally flickered open. Then he snapped his focus to the braided swordswoman and saw her grimace hard as she clutched her leg, realizing with dread that the healing magic just wouldn't work. He stared in horror as his face tightened with the worst realization of all his own brutal healing had failed too. This wasn't just an injury, it was a curse. Elsewhere, Karen, the other adventurer he saved, burst into relief and clasped her hands together. Thanking Klaus with trembling words because of him, her father could finally rest easy. Seeing that curse hit Klaus like a punch, suddenly he was back in the mage's division, staring at a patient with the exact same affliction, watching helplessness crush him because he couldn't find a cure back then. He remembered the brutal truth in its final stages: the curse would turn its victim's body to stone, and that meant death was inevitable, and now dread hit him hard because he realized it was the very same curse haunting Karen's companion. Back in the Mage Division's treatment room, Klaus kept watch over the swordswoman lying unconscious, while Tamara, the head of the facility, stepped in clutching a heavy tome and told him she'd been digging into this ever since that other adventurer with the same symptoms died. She flipped open the book and froze on a page showing a slithering, dragon-like beast, Ouroboros, she said. And then her voice cracked as she asked if it had anything to do with the curse. Tamara snapped that bits of sealed ancient ruins were shattering loose and tearing into people all around them. Her research proved it: if you got bitten by a shard of Ouroboros, a black curse-like stain would creep across your body, spreading fast. Klaus whips around to his companion, the holy beast Jinbu, and demands to know if he's got any answers. Jinbu, the little turtle, shoots back an apology and admits that even though they're sealed tools, they can't read the Ouroboros seal at all. Then he quickly adds his thanks to reassure Klaus he's going to be fine. Then it hits him like a punch. Her revival of Stampede wasn't the end of it at all. It was a warning sign that Ouroboros fragments had been slipped into the mix, and he realizes he's been played. And after that, Kamara blurts out the last part, her face tight with dread, and says the same thing will happen to the swordswoman too. She'll start slowly turning to stone, just like the other adventurer. Her words slam into Klaus like a punch. Pure horror, Tamara says. The woman's got about 2 years left, and that clock ticks louder in Klaus's head as his mind races back to his sister. He turns to Tamara for hope, but she cuts straight through him. No cure is known. Then she lays her hand on a book and lets a tiny spark of possibility flicker to light. She tells you there are records going back 200 years in the neighboring kingdom of St. Folia, and how a saint from there shattered the Ouroboros curse for good. While the swordswoman takes a breath, Jinbu leans in and tells her, the saints of St. Folia have guarded the Ouroboros seal for generations, so he bets the current saint might know the one way to smash Karen's curse of that annoying flicking. With his resolve turning into iron, Klaus announces he's heading straight for St. Folia, then he spins to go, only for Tamara to shout, "Wait!" She tells him the saint of St. Folia isn't the kind of person you just stumble upon, and Klaus, unshaken, grins and begs her to reach out to her connections, swearing he'll wait a few days, then throws her a cheerful, heartfelt thank you. Then he blurts that while they wait, he'll dig into his own blue magic to see what he can do, until Tamara snaps in immediately, warning him not to go charging ahead and acting on impulse. Klaus's resolve clenches like iron because when the braided swordswoman makes that solemn vow to him, his mind locks onto one mission: he has to break the Ouroboros curse. Before Klaus can even brace himself, a towering salamander-like beast erupts in roaring flame, and right nearby a young woman with long dark hair freezes in sheer shock because this is the one she's been hunting, a special golden magic wielder, and she can't believe he's standing here in front of her. Her mind spirals with what the guild just told her: the King Minotaur is dead, crushed during the stampede. She came hunting for the one who did it, and in her gut she knows it's the Demon Emperor. As her thoughts whirl, Klaus, half hidden behind his mask, leans in and asks if she's okay, flashing that sharp grin like, "People like you can actually save the world." Klaus storms out of the encounter and strides through the Mage Guild's treatment facility. Jaw set and eyes locked on the goal, he refuses to stop until he finds a way to break Karen's curse. Solo footsteps thudded softly as he moved down the quiet corridor. Just as he's about to move, a voice cuts through. "Klaus." It's Aaron, the Holy Knight's leader, and he storms up with worry in his eyes, demanding to know if Karen's okay, telling Klaus that Tamara already filled him in on everything. He steals a look into the next room, and sorrow floods his face there. The braided swordswoman lies motionless in bed, with a tiny turtle-like creature huddled by her head, and Aaron can only watch as she's still asleep. Then he turns to Klaus and tells him, "Don't push yourself, Karen needs you to stay steady." Seeing how utterly exhausted Klaus is, Aaron slides over a wrapped parcel of food, tells him he must have gone without a meal, and offers to share. Klaus just nods quietly, murmuring thanks. Sitting shoulder to shoulder at that tiny table, Aaron leaned in and told Klaus he had to talk nothing to do with Karen's condition. Then his eyes locked on him, and Aaron demanded the truth: why Klaus had been kicked out of the Mages Guild. faces Aaron, explaining that in the worst moments, he missed the truth. Aaron pushes harder, stunned that someone this brilliant could be thrown out. He finally blurts out the ugly truth people call him useless, just because all he can do is healing magic. So they cut his pay in half. Aaron's left wide-eyed, gripping the shock because it's beyond belief that Commander Fowl would dare mistreat someone this talented, someone who's saved so many lives. Right in the middle of their tense argument, a weak groan crawls out from a nearby bed. Both men snap their heads around and Klaus blurts out the name, Karen Sam. The bed creaks and the braided swordwoman's eyes snap open, blinking in a haze as she scans the room, baffled, quietly asking herself where in the world she's landed. She jolts upright, eyes snapping to the two men. "What is this?" she blurts, and Klaus stays cool as he explains she's in the Mages Guild's treatment room, then asks how she's feeling until her gaze drops to something on her own arm. As she meets the stare, panic flares in her eyes. Then Klaus' voice booms in, deep and grim, calling it a curse. Her eyes lock onto that dark looping symbol now burned into her forearm, and Klaus tells her it was carved there while she fought to protect someone. Then he drops the punch that crushes her. This curse is slowly freezing her limbs in place, and he can't do a thing to stop it. Aaron demands if there's any other way to treat it. Klaus says Tamara handed him some materials about a healing tied to Saint Folia, but he barely understands it and can't promise miracles, and his face crumples with pain as he realizes every ounce of his hard work was only meant to protect Karen. He stands at her bedside, drowning in the thought that he failed her when it mattered most while from the bed. Karen quietly answers his silent despair. Her voice snaps him into action. He blurts out an apology and calls himself a pathetic brother. And the moment those words hit, she's stunned, her eyes widening as if she didn't expect it. Her shock melts into a dazzling, reassuring smile, then she snaps upright like nothing happened, swearing she's totally fine and can move without a single problem, and Klaus and Aaron both stare in straight-up disbelief. He just freezes, eyes locked on the impossible scene, and all he can do is choke out her name, Karen. While he's still trying to wrap his head around it, Aaron strides up and reminds him that Karen saved a bunch of his soldiers, so the Holy Knight's commander swears he'll cooperate fully and tells them to keep their voices calm, and even though Klaus is still reeling, he finally manages to offer his thanks. Karen cuts in with a soft, steady look, speaks straight to her brother, and tells him she's okay, then pushes him to go home right now. To hammer her point home, she grabs his hands in hers, smiling calmly as reassurance floods the air and her gaze never wavers. Her resolve hardens, she's done hesitating. She decides to hunt down the Saintess and throw herself into uncovering even more healing methods. Tears kept spilling down her face as she stared at Klaus, and he stared right back with unshakable resolve, hands clasped tight, making a solemn promise that he would be the one to cure her, while she choked through her tears and pushed him to make it happen. You let out a quiet little hum of agreement. Thoughtful and heavy in the air, he slid into the chair beside her bed, clasped her hand tight, and the curse's twisted, shadowy patterns stared back like proof of the nightmare they were trapped in together. Several days rolled by, and Klaus dropped to his knees before Karen, telling her he'd been running experiments ever since that day, desperate to find a way to save her. He spelled out his theory and said the real breakthrough was this. If her curse magic and his power were mixing, he could just hit her magic with his directly, so he went for it. Karen nodded along and admitted she got a tiny tingling, but nothing major happened. As he kept going, she suddenly snapped with a scream, her face twisting in pain. She choked out an apology and admitted this time it was both painful and numb, a dead giveaway. The attempt was collapsing. Then she cursed their luck, even with his daily research, because they were still getting zero good results. That failure crushed Klaus's confidence and left him feeling utterly helpless, stuck on what to do next, especially since Amara still hadn't sent a single word. And right then, the doorbell blasted through the silence like a lifeline. He lunged to the door, shoved it open, and blurted out an apology for keeping her waiting. Then froze when a woman with long, dark hair stood right there, and he couldn't help asking who she was. Out of nowhere, the mysterious woman yanks him into a tight hug, arms locked around him, and bursts into joyful tears, shouting his name like a dream finally came true. She looks absolutely thrilled to have found him at last. Blindsided by the sudden touch, he stammers out, "What's happening?" Then her bold move hits him. She yanks back fast and blurts an apology, begging him to please let her go. The chaos spills over. Pulling even more people from inside, Karen shows up and grills her brother about what's wrong, while that spiky-haired young man snaps, demanding to know who this stranger even is. With two uniformed attendants bracing her sides, the woman drops into a deep bow and hurries out a proper, formal apology to Klaus, tearing back her pride to admit just how brutally rude she was, and pledging that her regret is 100 real. Straightening up like a commander, she introduces herself with undeniable authority. "I'm Seraphina Dale, and I'm the second saint of Cynifolia." Klaus's eyes blew wide with shock. Tamara had mentioned a saint, and he can't wrap his head around why someone that important would travel all this way just to see him. Before he can even open his mouth, Karen strides forward and fires a question at Serafina. Does she know Ouroboros? Serafina nods and admits that's exactly why she showed up. Then she asks politely if they'll hear her story. They all agree to hear her out. So the group crowds around a table, and one of Serafina's attendants slides a formal letter to Klaus, demanding he read it first. He stared at the paper, and then, boom, a vision slammed into his mind. A woman in spotless white, veil and all, hands clasped before her as if she'd been waiting. Forever, she called herself Maria Folia, the great saint of Cynifolia. Then the great saint's vision snapped straight into his mind. Her voice roaring with purpose, she begged the bearer of golden magic to link up with the holy beast, seal Ouroboros, and save the world, the very one she swore was slipping under the current demon lord. The braided swordswoman snapped, her words hit like a blade. Her face twisted between stunned disbelief and pure rage as she demanded answers. Why Klaus, the man who sealed the legendary demon lord, was suddenly being told to take his place. Serafina didn't panic. She started explaining right then, pointing at the world map as she spoke, and told everyone the truth. The world was in full-blown chaos, and the four nations of Centifolia sat at the very center of it all. She dug into the real history of their mission. Cynifolia's job was simple: shut Ouroboros down and keep the peace. Long ago, Arland managed to seal it away, but after hundreds of years, that lock finally snapped, and the horror came back. With the seal finally shattered and the holy beast gone astray, she blurted out their nightmare every time Ouroboros is unleashed. They have to hunt down someone who carries the exact same golden magic as the original sealer. Otherwise, they can't lock it up again. Laos swallowed the massive revelation, then snapped, asking if the saint's real mission was to guard the seal of Ouroboros, because the braided swordswoman shot back almost instantly, pressing whether that's why they'd trekked all this way. Serafina nodded and confirmed he got it, then told him her whole nation can track the demon lord's power using special crystals all across the world, and right now they're using them to hunt him down. She thrusts a glowing pendant toward Klaus and begs him to pour a tiny bit of his magic into it. He jolts in shock, remembering a magic aptitude test from 5 years ago. While everyone else's magic flared red or black, his alone burned with a bright golden glow, and Serafina snaps into place, saying, "That's exactly what they were hunting for. The pendant they handed him 2 weeks ago is what finally led them straight to him." It slams into his mind like a thunderclap, so hard he can't breathe, and he can't stop wondering. Does this mean he's been chosen to inherit the demon lord's power? Serafina shoots down his assumption on the spot, yelling that he's not the demon lord. Then she grabs him as Klaus and begs him to help them seal Ouroboros one more time. His mind snaps to another crisis: they've got to cure the curse haunting his companion too, and he knows they're already aware of it. Serafina nods, then slams the brakes on the distraction, reminding them their real mission can't wait, because if they hesitate, monsters will flood the world and wipe everything out. She tells them the curse can only be broken by defeating Ouroboros, but then drops the scary truth right from the start. It was never crushed, only sealed away. Laos thought hard about it, remembering that even Tamara, the saint, couldn't break the curse until Serafina cut in and said there was one last way to lift it. She says the trick is simple: get the scales of the holy dragon Kirin, the one creature that's basically Ouroboros' worst enemy. She kept talking, straight up admitting that tracking down the Kirin is brutally hard and she hasn't got a clue how to do it. Klaus and the young swordswoman just stared, stunned, while she said the Kirin is pure mystery, nothing like the holy beasts, because it exists only to seal Ouroboros to the bone. Then her tale went painfully personal. She confessed that her own father had caught the curse and once sat under Klaus's care. Back then, her mother raced off to find Kirin to save him and never came back. Klaus's eyes snapped wide, and the nightmarish memory of that untreatable patient clicked into place because it was her father. Her gloomy face shattered into a bright, fearless grin, and she swore things were different now. She was the saint. Klaus was the demon lord, and with their powers merged, she was sure they could finally find a cure. Even with hesitation, the swordswoman nodded in a soft, steady yes. Then Serafina stepped in, pushing them all to talk things over with the great saint about the Quran and begging her to finally agree. She pushed the plan forward, urging them to meet the great saint right away and then head back to Centifolia together. Then she asked the swordswoman for permission to talk with Karen and the rest of the guild, and the swordswoman agreed without hesitation. Laos looked completely swamped by the sudden avalanche of plans and blurted out where they were supposed to even start, while Serafina just smiled, brushed off his panic, and reminded him he was their benefactor. As he watched her disappear down the hall, clarity slammed into him like a switch flipping, and for the first time in ages, hope ignited. The way forward finally lit up. He spun toward the swordswoman, eyes burning with resolve, and put a hand on her shoulder. As he declared his choice, he was heading to Centifolia to beg the great saint for help. He tells his sister his decision, and with a calm, steady look, she clenches her fists and whispers, "I'm with you." At Woodville Castle, Faltino from the Mages Guild strides right up to King Kiefer and announces himself. Then the king wastes no time thanking him for all his trouble, plus the huge stash of stamina potions he just delivered. He waves off the praise with humble ease, then boom, his eyes sharpen with cunning as he pivots to a new question, asking King Kiefer whether he's heard the buzz about the adventurer who wiped out the King Minotaur all by himself. The king's eyes go razor sharp as he hammers the adventurer's identity, and you can see the panic in him. He blusters, stammers, and insists he has no clue about anyone like that. He sinks back into his throne, and his voice turns iron cold as he tells Fowl he has a mission that can't wait one he expects him to take on right now, and Fowl accepts without a single hesitation. The monarch finally drops the name he'd been chasing, Klaus Finley, then orders Fowl to recruit him himself and drag the young prodigy straight into the Mages Guild. His eyes snap wide with disbelief, and shock hits his face like a tidal wave as the king's order finally clicks. Right then, Klaus was inside a shop, grabbing supplies for his journey when a bitter laugh hit him in the gut. He'd been banished, and now they were calling him back. Inside the treatment room, beneath a sky full of stars, Tamara reads a letter and her face snaps with shock. She whispers that she can't believe she's finally learning about the third saint, all of it tied to a promise she made to the great saint of Cynofolia. He stares at the letter in disbelief, then Klaus shows up, admitting he's just as shocked he got called. Tamara whips around with the wax-sealed envelope in hand and confirms it's the exact letter she was promised. His smile fades as the message hits, seriousness settles in, and that one key phrase keeps pounding in his head, the thought that he can actually help the person he's become. Thanks for the heads up, but Tamara watches him with that knowing stare. Like she can read him through and through. She says his urge to help is so fierce that his intentions are basically glowing, pure and impossible to miss. Seeing that stubborn determination in his eyes, Tamara steps in and hands him a parting gift for the road and then tells him she's got a story she just has to share. Divine drifts back to a brutal memory. She's reliving the day a magical beast tore through everything, smashing her confidence so hard she couldn't even fight back trapped in the treatment room. She's convinced she abandoned her duties as a magic user, watching powerlessness take over while chaos rages around her. Henry snaps his focus and the bandaged man screams for help. Then a way younger Klaus barrels forward, calmly telling a seated patient, "Leave it to me." The kid lunges, yanks a volatile, glowing, magical artifact straight out of someone else's grip, and Tamara erupts, calling his name in pure shock and terror. The dangerous light finally dies down, and young Klaus whips around with a bright grin, saying the threat is over, only for Tamara to snap at him for rushing in like that. As the memory slips away, her present-day thoughts land hard. That was the moment she chose to protect Klaus's good heart, even if it meant swallowing her pride. House, cheeks tingling with heat, stared at Tamara's healing magic like it was pure wizardry, and he couldn't help thinking she was absolutely unreal. That promise solidified into a vow under the glittering night sky. He swore he'd master the healing arts Tamara taught him, save Karen, and stop those vile monsters from ever hurting anyone again. The very next day, Klaus' dragon buddy, perched on his shoulder, told Karen the guild was shutting down for the day so they could get ready to leave. And right then, Ursel slid up, wondering if Karen was coming along. Then he looked Klaus straight in the eye and dropped a bombshell. His family, the Alberts, were guardians bound by oath to protect the holy beast, Jin Bu, and the stunned Klaus could only spit out one question. Was he really talking about the Demon Lord? Ursel made it clear they were just guards for the holy beast, and if the Demon Lord showed up, they might not be able to hold it back. Then he turned to Klaus and asked straight up where the Demon Lord was headed, and Klaus calmly confirmed he knew. Right then, the creature perched on Klaus's shoulder snapped up and said, "It Jinbu, the holy beast, wakes the very moment the Demon Lord rises." Ursel nodded and added the truth. A whole clan of guardians watches over the sacred land where Jinbu sleeps. Then he finally laid bare his real mission. Yeah, sure, his job was to guard the seal, but when the Demon Lord suddenly showed up, he feared everything would flip, so he rushed to the holy B-side, claiming a divine calling to cleanse the world, and he straight up asked Klaus for permission to join their journey as Jinbu's guardian. The truth hit Klaus like a wrecking ball. Ursel's clan had been grooming this moment for generations, and he'd been chasing the Cheelan's horn without even realizing it. Backed by people who'd stayed devoted for years, Ursel stared him down and said, his job as a guardian wasn't optional. It was a duty he couldn't abandon. He weighs Ursel's proposal and realizes he can't keep going solo, then his face hardens and he officially accepts, saying he gets it and can't wait to team up. Once he made up his mind, he and Karen, his sister, stride through town side by side, and a heavy, somber silence clings to them with every step. They hook up with Jerry, and Klaus hands his sister over like, "Take care of her." Jerry grins bright and confident, telling him to go, everything's covered. Then Klaus wheels around to Karen and says it's time for him to leave. She tilts her head up at him, calling him Big Brother, then asks voice shaky if it's really okay for her to join him later after she's fully recovered. Jerry cuts in softly, telling Karen to rest for now, and Karen answers with a warm smile that she'd really like Karen to stick around for a little while. He quietly nods along with Jerry's idea because this is the only move that makes sense, and he can tell the road ahead is way too deadly for her to face alone, not like this. His sister's face hardens with determination. She locks eyes with him and makes a vow once she's healed. They're hitting the road together for an adventure. Her words hit like fireworks, flipping his mood from tense to radiant, and he blurts out a wholehearted yes, spilling a wild dream of the two of them roaming to unknown lands, catching festival lights, devouring street food, and smashing monsters in their path. And when she questions whether he means it, he flashes that huge grin and swears, "Of course," because the moment she's in, they're adventurers for real. Right as he was about to leave, the braided swordswoman who'd hooked up with his party lit up with a dazzling, starry grin. She beamed and told him straight up if he was really going to go do adventurer stuff, she'd gladly ride along. Then Klaus and Ursel set off, and Klaus lifted his hand in a last wave, promising he'd come back for sure. Their adventure kicked off beneath a sky that was swallowed by restless, cloud-dusted darkness. Sitting tall on their massive lizard-like mount, Ursel flashed a calm grin and admitted that riding Genbu felt way more comfortable than he'd expected. Then Klaus seized the moment and prodded his companion to spill more about himself. Ursel kicked off his tail, telling me he'd already lived in Cynifolia until he was 15. And he couldn't believe it. He never once thought he'd end up setting out on a journey like this. He kept talking, eyes drifting away, and you could tell since he was a kid, he'd been hammered again and again with what his life was meant to do. When Klaus heard that, his face tightened, and seriousness hit hard. He admitted he craved power, not just for his feelings about helping his sister Karen, but because he truly needed the strength to shatter Ouroboros' seal, especially since the Saints were backing him even though they could have barely known him at all. Ursel chewed on every word, then said, "Strength is something you can't measure until you've faced it," because the memory of their escape came crashing back when he spotted the armored swordswoman. He'd invited her to climb onto their mount and ride with them on the road ahead. As they ride on, Ursel leans in and asks if they're headed for the capital of Cynifolia, and Klaus nods, then grimly admits their route is blocked. Monsters crawling out after a fresh stampede, and just like that, a hulking two-headed wolf-like beast rockets toward them, making the braided swordsman scream in alarm. The braided swordswoman snaps into action and rockets forward with her blade, and the creature answers by bursting sharp black spikes from its hide extreme. Ice blood leaving Klaus and Ursel staring in stunned disbelief. With the monster finally crushed and slumped dead in the street, the path is clear for now. Klaus whips around to Ursel, urgency blazing, and demands a detour to Tamara's place on the edge of town, saying she has something vital to teach him right this second. He grins, points ahead, and tells Klaus, "Go on, lead the way." Meanwhile, in a hushed office inside that giant building, Klaus's sister Karen slumps at her desk, chin propped on her hand, staring into nothing as she whispers her brother's name, worried like something's about to snap. Her thoughts get ripped to shreds the moment the door explodes open. Commander storms in like a war drum, face twisted with rage, and barks whether Klaus Finley is in the room. He slams his fist on the reception desk, barks for Karen's name and business, then sneers at her as a cheeky receptionist demanding she bring Cloud Stammer to him. She rises like a spark caught in the dark eyes hard, jaw set, then grabs Foul's arm with shocking strength and snaps that she has nothing to say to someone with zero manners or common sense and demands. She moves without a second thought, slamming her hand onto Commander Foul's fist. Cold power explodes out and snaps his grip shut inside jagged ice. Her hand ignites with an icy glow and she grins so wide it's downright chilling. Foul yelps and stumbles back, slashed by the brutal cold. Enraged, he snaps that she's messing with his precious receptionist, but Karen just turns the tables and asks what business he even has with her. Watching the clash, Jerry swiped a bead of sweat from her brow. She hadn't even caught the incantation. And now she realizes both siblings are insanely strong. He shrugs off the cold and bluntly says he's hunting for Klaus Finley, because Klaus should be tied to the very guilt hanging over this place. Just as he tries to speak up, Karen slams her free hand on the counter. Loud then declares Klaus is probably holed up in the capital, Maltino, and swears she'll catch that incompetent fool herself. Karen's brutal declaration hangs in the air, and the silence feels poisonous. Then she flashes a sly grin at a trembling Jerry and presses, "Did I tell my brother?" She leans in, saying she's got to have a real talk with Klaus, and the moment her aura spikes into something lethal, Jerry can't help but freeze, visibly scared. Then she whirls back to the reception desk, her voice turning gentler, and tells Jerry the other adventurers probably won't be back yet. She still orders him to stay put at her post for a little longer. Once Jerry agrees, Karen strides to the window and stares outside, thinking her brother has probably already touched down in the country. Then a flashback hits her. She was just 5 when she found out she and Klaus weren't actually blood-related. Her mind snapped back to that childhood talk when she'd sat young Klaus down and told him, "We're not real siblings, so we can be together. No blood needed, no rules needed, just love." And she swore that meant they could stay side by side forever, which somehow made her start asking, innocently, whether marriage was even part of the equation. In this moment, the memory slammed back childhood joy, the dream that she could become his bride. Then truth hit hard. He doesn't see her that way anymore. He cherishes her like a little sister. Still, a stubborn hope refused to die. What if her wish came true and they both became adventurers? Maybe things could finally change. That hope became a tight, steady promise in her chest once she held it close. She vowed he'd finally look her way and only her. Clinging to that secret wish, Klaus stared off into the distance, expression locked tight while inside him, his feelings churned in silence. Jianbu drops Klaus and Ursel off at a hidden wooden cabin deep in a sunlit forest. And as they step down, Klaus stares at the plain little house like it finally clicks. He gets exactly why they're here, out in the middle of nowhere. Ursel heads toward the cabin and blurts out, asking if Klaus knows whose place this is. Klaus shoots back with a grim look, saying he's certain it belongs to Fowl, the former commander of the Magic Division, and that answer hits Ursel like a shockwave. He shuts down the boy's guess and spells it out. This trip is all for Morse Kenbridge, the legend dubbed a genius of magic manipulation, with his name dripping power and brilliance like a storm cloud. House freezes as the news hits, his mind sprinting to keep up. While Ursel leans in and drops the bomb, Morris belongs to the prestigious Albert family. He kicks the creaking wooden door wide, then flings an arm toward Klaus like, "Come in right now," as he ushers him into the workshop. The place greets them with organized chaos. Some dude with long, light hair has his back to them, totally locked into his work while books, papers, and bizarre mechanical parts pile up all around him. His beloved hands hover over a tangled device, an intimidating panel packed with a huge central dial and a sea of buttons while he mutters under his breath, then makes one last razor-delicate adjustment. For a split second, Ursel whips around to Klaus with a frustrated huff, then blurts out that a brand new super-dimensional communication device just triggered a tidal wave of requests, and there's no way they'll clear it all at this pace. He waves at the chaotic mess and tells Klaus to grab a seat somewhere. Inside the workshop, Klaus steps up and introduces himself to the seated Morse Cambridge, like, this is the moment that matters, serious, formal, no backing down. The reclusive genius barely moves, just turns his head enough to acknowledge Klaus's words and quietly confirm who he is. Right before the conversation can even start, another voice slices in. An elderly man with a piercing stare says he heard from Tamara about their request to meet the Saintess, and then admits they also made him judge Klaus personally. Without wasting a second, he flashes a grin and dares Klaus to a contest right now, catching Klaus completely off guard. They slipped into a clearing beyond the workshop, and the old man broke it down because he's convinced you'll never truly see someone's real character or strength until they face the test head-on. As he snaps his explanation shut, the old man rockets upward, leaving the ground behind, wrapped in a blazing column of light, and he waves Klaus forward with wide, stunned eyes. Klaus stares up in shock because the power roaring in that light is unreal, leagues beyond anything he's ever witnessed in an active adventure. That brutal show of power snaps Ursel into a rage. He bursts out that this is nothing like what they agreed on, and he hammers it into the old man's head. Klaus is the one who's supposed to be tested, not him. With a calm grin, the old man just laughs and gives in. He declares that Ursel, the Woodville Guildmaster and the Blackwing Falcons leader, will be his stand-in for the match. Then he snaps, "Klaus, get ready!" And Klaus immediately nods in agreement. Klaus steadied his breath. Then his hand lit up with a blazing, complicated magical sigil as he unleashed Regen, Limit Break, and Divine Secret Awakening in one furious push, and a brutal dark-bladed sword snapped into his grip across from him. Ursel squared up with her weapon drawn, staring him down with a grim, unshakable face. He shoots up a hand to tell Ursel to hold. Then the Guildmaster snaps, saying he'll strike first to read the battle's rhythm, and just like that, Ursel surges forward with a frightening burst of speed, his dark blade already swinging. The crushing swing rips through Klaus's cape, and in that heartbeat he realizes Ursel can't possibly land a hit. With his strength getting yanked away, he realizes it's a black magic drain spell, pain stabbing his body as he clenches his teeth, and then he fires off a high heal spell, knowing this has to be the power of Ursel's demon sword, Shiva. He rockets backward, yanking space away because he knows Ursel will wreck him if she lays a finger on him. No spells allowed. Ursel just grins with calm confidence, taunting him. "Are you done already?" while pointing out that Klaus still hasn't even dared to counterattack. The Guildmaster keeps pressing, mocking Klaus and asking if he'll just stand there and let him slip behind. Klaus admits it's brutal fighting someone who's thinking on the fly, so he swallows his doubt and accepts the challenge. And right as he commits, Ursel snaps into a lightning-fast backflip. Right in front of him, a blazing, intricate magical sigil flickers into existence, and he's made it. A completed spell rockets forward and slams Ursel right in the back, and the Guildmaster gasps in shock while the old man leans in, watching with sharp, wild interest. Then the world goes black for Klaus as he passes out. Spellfire. Ursel's forced magic release bursts from his back and fades away, and he jolts upright, stunned and demanding to know what Klaus did. Swearing he dodged the blast only to find Klaus crumpled on the ground, knocked out cold, unable to say a word. Fresh off his duel, Klaus lit up as he explained his strange magic to Ursel and Morse Cambridge, summoning a glowing circle in front of them. Then he snapped, saying he'd already have to draw it first because it takes a moment to kick in, but once it does, it sips magic instead of guzzling it, and he called it a total success. Ursel nodded like it made perfect sense. Still, a crushed Morse demanded what he was supposed to do after losing the wager, and Klaus soothed him straight up, admitting he couldn't use any other kind of magic besides this one. Right when their conversation was about to heat up, an authoritative old man burst in from a nearby building, smiling like he already knew the answer, and held out a small, intricate device for them to see. He explained it was a magic tool, a comms machine that blasts its signal farther by soaking a set amount of magic straight into every circuit, and the old man told Klaus that if he could learn to channel that magic into it, he'd get stronger for sure. When Ursel offered the device, he cut in fast, ordering Klaus to hold up while he turned to Morris and told him to handle his own work. Klaus agreed, but Ursel's sudden move left him staring, completely baffled. His eyes stayed locked on Morris as he interrogated him, clearly seething, demanding to know why he'd accept such an insane workload while Klaus hovered nearby, utterly lost until the old man cracked open a huge crate and revealed dozens more of the exact same communication devices. The old man finally laid it all out. Turns out a recent monster stampede jammed everything up, and now these magic tools are desperately needed by far too many people at once. He pressed on, warning that without those communication devices, people were going to get crushed. Then a diagram snapped into view, showing monsters sealing off the routes between settlements and choking every last line of contact. When the old man's explanation finally stopped, his eyes softened as he locked onto Klaus, telling him he could clearly see the effort etched into every step of his magic crafted by the path he'd forged. Then he pointed out the truth. Klaus wasn't training for himself at all, and that's exactly why he has to keep training. Klaus's face flashed with shock, and then the sharp realization hit. He nods and dives into the job without hesitation, while Ursel beside him lets out a tired sigh, worn down to her bones. Ursel immediately jumps in, ready to help, but the old craftsman shuts him down and explains it bluntly. Ursel's way of pouring magic is too crude, and it'll spit out the wrong result. A louse, then he grins to himself, convinced he'd wanted in on that magic core with Morris. The old craftsman snaps his focus back on him and says, "Your control and speed are solid, but the real test is making your magic flow stay perfectly even." Then he leans in and asks Klaus, "So you get what I just did with my own magic, right?" He leans in and says, his eyes are so sharp they can even map the flow of magic itself. Then he lifts one of the comm devices and orders Klaus to channel his power into it, right there, as the test. As Klaus pours power into the device, it erupts with crackling magic. The old man lays out the whole plan, just a steady, razor-thin stream of magic held for ages to stretch the signal. One perfectly enchanted gadget can hit 10 kilometers, but the real test is brutal. Enchant 10 of them, and rack up 100 kilometers total, or it doesn't pass. With the settings locked in, he formally orders Klaus to finish a huge pile of devices. Then Klaus grabs the communicator, eyes shining, and eagerly promises he'll do his absolute best. His early excitement fizzles out, and a colder truth lands. He realizes he can only enchant 5 of the devices with what he can do right now, and the method clicks in his head like a long, steady breath of magic. Ursel steals his resolve, swearing he'll finish the job, even as the old craftsman warns him not to burn his magic while Ursel just keeps staring at the 7 devices he's already pulled off. His determination burned hotter with every memory of Karen. She'd gripped one of those devices, told him they could reach the people who mattered most, then swore she'd throw her full support behind him as her master. And he accepted that promise without a second thought. He grips that memory tight, pours his power into the device, and magic sparks explode around it, making it blaze bright while Ursel stares from just a few steps away. Inside the workshop, Ursel lifts up a perfectly enchanted device, grinning like he just won everything, while across the table Klaus stares at the whole setup, shocked, speechless among the scattered components. He proudly tells the craftsman, "I'm done." And right on cue, Klaus cuts in, claiming he's finished too. The old man leans in over their work, grinning, and points out they didn't just light up 10 devices, they lit up 15 in total. A huge win after that. He declares that they've both passed and hands them the next challenge, trying to channel magic through a magic sword. Ursel snaps into action, yanking a massive dark blade with a jagged edge into his grip sparks and raw power crackle around it as he roars the name, Magic Sword Shiva. The blade screams with raw power, and Klaus freezes jaw-dropped as the truth hits him like a punch. Ursel's magic runs on a whole other tier, and right now he's absolutely certain he can't win. Klaus is still reeling from that wild burst of power when the old craftsman barks, "Use both hands, cast the magic formation." Klaus hesitates, confused, and shoots back a question, but the craftsman shoves him onward while a soft healing glow blooms just beside them. Following the instruction, he thrusts his hands forward and two glowing magic circles suddenly ignite in front of him. His heart skips as he realizes the truth. He can now unleash two formations at once, something he couldn't do before. Ursel glares with annoyance, grumbling that he wants a rematch, but Klaus just shoots up with excitement and asks the craftsman if he can keep training in Cinefolia, even if Morris isn't there. The old craftsman grins warmly and nods, then he adds, loud and clear, that Klaus better show up. His whole face lights up with a huge, relieved grin as he and Ursel lock eyes, both instantly getting it. Training finally done, a thankful voice booms across the land, pouring heartfelt gratitude into the master who guided them. Meanwhile, inside the Centifolia Royal Castle, Seraphina Dale is in full panic mode. She begs for help to find Kylan, because only his return can save her sister, and she's convinced that if Klaus can awaken the Holy Beast, it'll stop Ouroboros from rising again. She leans in and speaks directly to the young girl who listens with knitted brows, then blurts out her biggest fear. Does Seraphina, a commoner who just got swept into all this, really have what it takes to save the world? Climbing high atop a huge Saurian mount, Klaus rumbled through the thick forest as he thanked Ursel especially for brokering peace with that great saint and tracking down a communication device from Oris. Ursel casually drops the bombshell that his family is already allied with the Duke of Cinefolia's house, and that's why their talks have been sliding so smoothly while Klaus Steyer, stunned, blurts out why Ursel never said any of this. The prize instantly turns into pure confusion when Klaus blurts out why Ursel, the guildmaster, is tangled up with the Duke's family, and Ursel just stays cool as he explains that the great saint thinks logically, and you're better off being fully prepared. Klaus swallows that lesson like fuel, hardens his resolve, and vows that if he brings back the four holy beasts, he'll trade them for help finding the right care. Hearing Klaus say it so firmly, Ursel's face hardens at once. He knows exactly how heavy that choice really is. Finally, they roll into the capital Martino, and Klaus just stops, staring in awe as the sun-kissed buildings glow like they're hiding secrets. And Ursel nods, confirming this is the very land ruled by the same power. He strolls through the bustling streets, soaking up the warm, friendly vibe, and whispers to himself that this is the kind of city Karen would fall in love with, then promises he'll bring her here one day. Then Castle whips his gaze to a towering building far off and declares it's Cinefolia Castle, telling Klaus their time with the great saint is finally here. In the castle corridor, their escape route gets slammed by a terrified woman sprinting for her life. Then Seraphina Dale bursts up behind her, yanking Selena's attention as she calls out. But right as the woman halts, her eyes go wide in recognition. "Klaus Sama," she blurts in pure shock, and Klaus is just as stunned, demanding why she's here and why she's suddenly talking to him about the great saint. He and Ursel were ushered into the grand hall where Seraphina, hands tight with worry, blurted out an apology for the delay, then turned to the great Saint Mariana standing silent on a far-off dais, and finally locked eyes with Klaus to say this was her very first time meeting the Demon Lord. She stared in awe at her calm, unshakable presence, then silently called her great Saint Mariana. He bowed so low his hair almost hit the floor, and she smiled as she thanked him. Then softly asked him to lift his face and look at her. She went on, saying, "The Demon Lord is a one-of-a-kind monster who shows up only once every few hundred years." Then she hit him with the real shock. It's them who pledged loyalty to the Demon Lord, so he shouldn't panic and should speak his mind. He stammered out a thank you, still trying to wrap his head around her words. Then Seraphina pressed him to jump straight into the real reason he came. Then her eyes snapped to the beast perched on her shoulder. Ouroboros, and she declared, loud and clear, that he was the Demon Lord and his seal would crumble once the four holy beasts moved. He couldn't believe what he'd just heard. Demon Lord bowing to the great saint sounded unreal, but suddenly it felt like his only way out, and he had to wonder, did Selena tell her this secret? Right from the shadows, a new voice snapped in Jinbu. The tiny, turtle-like creature, he announced. The four holy beasts were already waking up, and breaking the seal was just a countdown. Then Jinbu laid down the demand the Demon Lord needed to return to them in his true form. The story snaps into a grand formal chamber. Klaus stands before Seraphina and, with a solemn nod, accepts every one of her terms. Then he lifts his gaze and demands to make just one request. The whole meeting was sparked by a desperate plea. An anxious young attendant had already told Selena that her little sister was trapped under the Ouroboros curse. Fueled by that crushing urgency, he goes straight to Seraphina with his request before he can restore the other holy beasts. He has to track down the Kirin, and he promises her every scrap of intel he has, what it looks like, where it lives, and the exact time and date of its last sighting. He dips his head, apologizing to the Demon Emperor before the chaos he's about to unleash. Just as he's about to go on, Seraphina slams into the moment ice in her voice. She tells him he won't be able to hunt the Kirin until the holy beasts are back in their right minds. Klaus's eyes snap wide, pure shock hitting him all at once. Her words slam into him like thunder. He stammers that time is running out, that his sister's life is hanging by a thread. She lays out her answer with icy finality. She can't help him search for the Kirin, and it guts Klaus so hard he just goes speechless. She tells him that doing his duty for the other beast is the price they demand. Then that crushing condition slams into him, his thoughts spinning out of control, and he begs for just a moment to think. Under a partly cloudy sky, a tense conversation kicks off near a towering, steeple-capped building. Right beside them, the braided servant blurts in panic to Seraphina, saying Klaus carries a crushing burden, and that he genuinely treasures his sister, Selena. She tilts her head just a bit, eyes locked and voice steady, declaring her duty without blinking. She has to keep hundreds of millions of lives safe, no matter what. He flashes a knowing smile, fully aware he's nothing like her, and then it hits him up until recently he was just a normal kid, until a gentle healer stepped in, helped him out, and even stopped the stampede. She listens, then snaps, asking why anyone would hand their country over to a saint. Like just having the blood of a holy woman is proof enough. She tells him it all comes from how she was raised aware, determined, and ready to defend her country. From the very start, she got a special education, and she was literally born to carry out that exact duty. Bringing the holy beast back to its senses won't be easy. This journey is packed with brutal setbacks. He strides off, staring at the crushing weight on his shoulders. Then out of nowhere, he's ordered to save the world with zero training, no prep, and no real resolve, and it's almost impossible not to quit halfway. He spins around then. Seraphina's voice slams the brakes. She flips her earlier words on their head, blazing with sudden conviction, and swears that if it's for his sake, she'll save the world no matter what. No. The story cuts back to an earlier moment. Seraphina faces the veiled great saint, Maria Folia, and drops a terrifying truth. There's something about the Chilean she's never been able to tell her. She bears the grim secret she'd been swallowing for days. Getting the Chilean's key means a saint must be turned into a human sacrifice. And then, like a flash, an image slams into her head, a young girl standing before the beast's radiant, ethereal glow. The lore finally cracks open. The Chilean isn't a separate thing at all. It's Ouroboros, locked away, and when a saint throws herself into sacrifice, the Chilean drops a key, the exact tool that can break Ouroboros' curse. Then Seraphina drops a jaw-breaking confession to the great saint, explaining that the Chilean she's talking to isn't some stranger at all. It's her older sister and her mother. And as the words land, a chilling memory crashes in a woman who looks just like her, standing face to face with the creature. The great saint reels in disbelief, grilling that 200-year-old legend, because a saint becoming a sacrifice just to get the key makes no sense to her at all. She demands to know if that terrifying story is real, and Seraphina is left frozen, stunned, and unable to speak. Coming back to the present, Seraphina tears open yet another horrifying truth for Klaus, her father. Crushed by grief, tried to break the curse to save his wife, and in the process he became a Kalan. Seraphina breaks down, furious at the clock because she wasn't there in time to stop it. Her sorrow hardens into steel. She clamps her fists tight, lifts her chin, and locks eyes forward like she won't blink, vowing she'll do this for Klaus. She stood face to face with the great saint, insisting she truly understood Klaus' pain. Then she slammed him with a brutal question. What if Klaus got the Chilean's key and just walked away from his journey? A split-second vision of her younger self surrounded by monstrous, clawing hands crashed into her mind, and the truth hit like a fist. If Klaus wasn't there, she'd be gone. The whole country would fall, and demons would sweep the world clean. The great saint, calling her Selena, pressed, "So you're still set on believing in Klaus, even with all these fears?" Selena met her eyes steady as stone, her will crystal clear. In the middle of a loud, busy town, Ursel tried to snap Klaus out of his funk and urged him to take a walk. But Klaus's face was full of worry, so he spun to the guildmaster and demanded, "What am I supposed to do?" His calm shattered the second the storm of frustration burst out of him. He shouted that there was no way he could possibly bring every holy beast back to their true forms. Ursel kept her voice steady, pointing out that if they helped Karen, they'd lose their chance to restore the holy beasts, and that even the great saint couldn't be trusted. Klaus squeezed his fist so hard it hurt, torn in two. His dream was to make Karen happy, but right now she was the one breaking. While he kept thinking and scanning the market, one truth hit him hard. The one with that rare power was his precious sister. Yet he couldn't shake the idea that someone like her could never truly protect the people. Ursel turned straight to the young hero, locked eyes with him, and fired off one sharp, simple question: did Klaus actually have the will to protect the world? He stays quiet, drowning in a memory of Karen. She's smiling, asking if he can keep fighting even after she's gone, then warning him that if he ever abandons his duty, the world will crash into something terrible and only he can see that truth clearly. His mind spirals, sweat slicking his brow as he remembers his duty and locks in his resolve, but then it hits him he never once really thought through the message he was supposed to deliver to Seraphina about the spirit's will. Herschel's voice slices right through his turmoil, calm as steel, like it's the only outcome that ever mattered. He snaps in, he's not mad at Klaus for his lack of nerve at all. He's talking to him right now just to get inside his head and judge exactly how things stand. Then he declares he truly believes Klaus will save the world before he presses him hard and asks straight up if he's got the grit to actually make it happen. Guildmaster Gaze hardens his gaze, telling Klaus it can't be true that Karen is the only person who matters to him, then lays out the proof of his heroism and how many lives he's already saved. As he talks, those creepy clowns flash through the young man's head. Over and over, Ursel leans in and snaps that if Klaus can't find his spine, he'll never pull anything off. For everyone who's counting on him, Klaus has to make it happen. The words hit like a knockout. Klaus's eyes go wide, tears glinting there as Ursel's truth finally crashes down on him. He stood there with his back to Ursel, eyes locked in, as the Guildmaster fired off his last piece of advice from this moment on. He had to think for himself, and Ursel promised that once he picked the topic, she'd set up a meeting with a great saint on his behalf. The talk finally wrapped up, and Klaus found himself staring down Seraphina Dale, the second saint, who hit him with a sharp warning. Know your weakness? He flinched, but he didn't back down, and he answered her with a solid yes. On that morning, he finally decided. Klaus stepped out of the inn with Karen at his side, and outside Ursel stood there with arms crossed, demanding to know if it was settled. Klaus answered with a hard nod, eyes locked on his goal. After he made his choice, he and Ursel marched with Seraphina and Saint Maria Folia through the bustling city streets until they finally hit a towering cathedral, where Seraphina turned back and thanked them again, like she meant every word. Inside those sacred cathedral halls, the great saint faced Seraphina straight on and told her she'd finally heard back from Ursel. Only her voice carried a warning, as if this answer could go sideways, and Seraphina had to stand there, uneasy and locked in. While the saints huddled, Klaus clenched his resolve, stared straight ahead, and quietly ordered them forward, calm voice, iron will, no backing out. Resolve didn't see it coming. The great saint lunged in with a heartfelt apology, and Seraphina's eyes snapped wide while Ursiel stared at her like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Seraphina just couldn't swallow that apology, so she grilled the great saint about it, then admitted she'd said something brutal herself and demanded to know why Maria Folia was the one apologizing, even wondering out loud if it all somehow circled back to Klaus. The reason for the apology hit like a punch the moment Klaus dropped to his knees before the great saint begging. He said the ones with real power can't hide from the weight of it because he'd inherited the demon lord's might. Then he went straight for the terrifying truth. If he couldn't awaken the holy beast, the world would be finished. And when he claimed that burden as his own, Seraphine's eyes nearly popped out of her head. He clung to his solemn vow with eyes locked tight, and when he swore he'd save the great saint no matter what, an image of Karen bound in chains burned through his thoughts, even if it trapped him in the same cruel fate. Seraphina watched, her face caught between pure confusion and deep worry. He walked beside his sister, and his thoughts snapped into place. He didn't want wealth or fame at all. What mattered was one brutal truth. He refused to be the kind of person who would hand the world's fate over to her. Then he faced the great saint head-on, voice rock solid, and admitted he should have shown his resolve from the very start because he was determined to awaken the holy beast. The great saint leaned in to listen, her face giving nothing away, and he kept talking, saying his sister had always been his first priority, and that nothing would ever change that, while Maria Folia nodded softly, her approval clear, but a shaky doubt still flickered in her voice. His mind snapped back to a promise he made beneath a sky full of stars. He'd told a younger Karen he'd chase his dream of becoming an adventurer, join Ursel's guild, roam the world, and gorge himself at endless great places. But even then he knew one truth: dreams only come true if you can live them with real happiness. Looking back at the present, he spilled his feelings. Yeah, Karen lit the fuse first, but ever since, he's met so many people who truly care, and now all that love has twisted into one fierce urge to protect them. His eyes locked onto the great saints, hope lighting up his face, and then he stepped forward formally asking her for help, begging her to join forces with him so they could save the world together. But he was just getting started, and his words cut off. Smiling, he crossed his arms with fresh confidence, swore he'd give it everything, and even begged for any info she had on Kieran. Her earnest plea and ironclad resolve hit the great saint hard. She visibly trembled, eyes blazing with raw emotion. She locked eyes with him, and right there she saw more than a plea. She saw a whole universe of resolve blazing back, heavy with every life he was fighting to protect. His head swam with the faces and voices of everyone he promised to save. Selena's desperate plea to save their lives. The old craftsman urging him to keep forging his calm so he could reach family again. And that young man's vow to get stronger while the whole crew's hope crushed and fueled him at once. A responsibility he swore he'd carry to make them all happy. Watching his conviction hit her like thunder, a single tear slid down Maria Foley's cheek. Her hands shook as she spoke, and her voice rang with pure awe because she could feel it. He wasn't bluffing, he truly meant to save all of them. With her mind made up, she snapped her hand forward and motioned them deeper into the chamber, while Klaus, too, felt her resolve sink in like fire. As they kept moving, she spilled the truth, admitting that, using only what he'd told her, it would have been reckless to demand he be taken as a hostage, and she had to make a brutal call right then. He paused, looked inward, and admitted that using people as bargaining chips was the move of an immature demon lord, one he finally understood was wrong. Selena watched, and with a soft chuckle and that gentle smile, she assured him, claiming he was, actually, a pretty great demon lord. As this new alliance comes together, Ursel slips a communication device into Klaus's hands and winks like she owns the moment, then tells him Morris filled her in on how hard they've been working to build these devices for the citizens. Meanwhile, Maria Folio weighs the pact's consequences, her determined smile sharpening as she realizes this alliance will power them all up at once. She shoots Klaus a bright, fearless look, thrusts out her hand, and begs him to come with her because together, they're going to save the world. He snatches her hand without a second thought and locks their fate together in a single, decisive moment. Up close, Ursel and Selena lean in, their faces lit up with clear approval as the new alliance finally clicks into place. Their trail drives them straight toward a towering fortress, the same place tied to the black magic they're dying to figure out. Maria Folia leads the crew to a massive, beautifully carved door, declaring, "This is the way forward," then whips around to lock eyes with one of them. She slaps her hand against the door and tells a stunned Klaus, dead serious, that only the Demon Lord's power can pry it open. So, yeah, the real truth is this: she needs his magic. He stands in front of the towering doors, and with a bone-deep groan they swing wide. Blasting open the path ahead, Maria Folio waits right behind him, silent as a shadow. His eyes go wide as he soaks in the grand throne room, lit up by eerie, floating glow at the far end. An ornate throne looms empty. Behind him, Maria Folia's voice rings out. This is the chamber where each successive demon lord has stepped down. A sharp jolt of recognition hits him like he's lived this moment before. His eyes land on a glowing magic circle on the floor, the exact same pattern as his own, and he blurts out, shocked, "So why is it here?" Seeing that circle detonates a flood of broken memories in his head one minute. A smiling woman, the next monstrous beasts, then laughing children, and somehow flashes of his own past all whipped together into a furious mental storm. He stumbles backward and clutches his head as the psychic assault smashes into him. And even though he swears he's never known these things, a sick wave of familiarity crashes through his mind until it hits him, horrified that the memories flooding in aren't his at all. As Klaus wrestles with those foreign thoughts, Maria Folia stays eerily calm and asks if the memories of the first demon lord have finally come back. Then the words hit him like a thunderclap, and Klaus just freezes, staring in shock at the horrifying truth he might be the demon lord reincarnated. She nods and tells him she gets it. This mountain of info is hitting him all at once, and you can practically see the chaos swirling in his head. Seeing how shaken he is, she urges Klaus to take a breather in the chamber and sort it all out. And even with the truth still pounding in his head, Klaus can only give a soft, hesitant nod. He stood inside the grand hall, and with a soft thud and a puff of smoke, the massive holy beast Jinbu shrank down right in front of him. The tiny creature crept closer as he sat down, asking if Klaus was okay, and Klaus, still reeling from a flood of memories, admitted that all of it was a lot to take in. He started snapping the pieces together, muttering that this had to be why his magic felt so different, because it demanded a magic circle. Still lost, he spun to Jinbu and pressed him. "So what does that mean, exactly?" Jinbu kicked things off by laying down how their world works. Humans and beasts are born with mana already living inside them, and all they have to do is learn how to tap that power. His method was totally different. He lifted a glowing magic circle and realized it could siphon in the world's ambient mana, then convert it into power he could use himself. That skill was called mana conversion. It was that wild variability. His power to twist a magic circle and turn the world's mana into anything he wanted. That's what made the Demon Lord the Demon Lord. This wild method was the key to his insane power. Jimba explained that since it fed off an outside source, he could unleash brutal healing magic without draining a single drop of his own reserves. Then a vision hit him, his past self staring back, realizing that his massive, still but different magical well was exactly why he ended up with that rank. A final piece clicked into place. He stared at the creature, then broke into a warm smile as he apologized for losing track, saying, I remember you, Jinbu. Jinbu, the creature, met his gaze with gentle eyes and apologized for making him forget. Then called Klaus Master, like it was the only title that mattered. Tears choking him up, Klaus lunged forward and pulled his old friend into a tight embrace. Then he thanked Jinbu for waiting for him all this time. Jinbu then leaned in and begged his master, please touch the jewel set in my forehead. He told him that one touch on the jewel would rip his master's memories back into place, sharper than ever, so Klaus listened hard, and the moment the truth hit, his face went deadly serious. The moment his fingers touched, a brutal rush of memory slammed into him. The first demon lord, Cecil, and he saw a flash of a man and woman walking away with two tiny, crying children left behind. In a memory, a woman leaned in and told young Cecil that his parents were setting out on the road because he and his siblings mattered more than anything to them. Then she warned him that if everything stayed the same, they wouldn't make it. The truth hit like a thunderclap in his chest. His parents had vanished to protect everyone they loved. So he followed their steps, and as the first demon lord, he vowed to shield the whole world with his own hands. With that recovered purpose locking into place, Klaus steadied his resolve and snapped back to the present, fist clenched like a promise. In the distance, Ursul's voice rang out confident as ever. Sure, Klaus would do what had to be done. His mind clears in an instant. He whips around to his companion and blurts, Thank you, Jinbu! Fresh resolve sparks in his voice, then he declares, Let's go back to the other holy beasts. The creature doesn't hesitate for a second. Its voice rings out, brimming with devotion. Of course, my lord. Elsewhere, by a towering clock tower, Seraphina practically sparkles as she announces she's joining the journey. While her attendant panics and warns it's dangerous, she just waves it off with a bright grin, swearing she can handle anything. Her declaration hits a wall. Ursul snaps that she has to obey his orders, and Klaus, clearly annoyed, shuts it down with a blunt, Don't refuse. Seraphina shoots out a circular, ornate magical device and blurts that it's a teleportation tool. If anything goes wrong, they can snap back to the castle in an instant. Then she can't stop thanking them for trusting her with something this precious. With the argument finally crushed, Ursul drops the destination bomb. Kirin was last seen in the Hudent Kingdom, where Akko's holy beast is sealed by its guardians, the Moslin family. As he talks, a snarling black, two-tailed feline flickers into view, and Klaus doesn't hesitate for a second. They're heading straight there. Right as they're about to head out, Seraphina's attendant drags her aside, panic flickering in her eyes, and in a hushed voice, she demands to know if this is really okay, and she mentions Kira by name. Seraphina's smile turns sharp and knowing as she leans in, tells her attendant to never mention this to Klaus, and admits she's just trying to repay the debt she owes. As she, Klaus, and Ursul got ready to leave, Maria Folia, the great saint, stepped into view, wrapped in her ceremonial white gown and veil, and gave them a powerful send-off, praying that Kirin's divine protection would shield them all. On the outskirts of Huey Dent, an official strides before the crowd and roars that the Saint of Centifolia has declared war on the Demon Lord, but then his voice drops into dread because their own holy beast, the White Tiger, has already awakened and is watching them. He keeps hammering out his fiery speech, yelling that the White Tiger is their nation's sacred beast and that they have to destroy it to save their homeland. While in the crowd, Karen, the braided swordswoman, stands stone still with clenched fists, her face locked in grim determination. His eyes narrowed hard as the truth hit him. He had already asked for a guardian to be assigned to the seal, and now he realized the person he contacted knew exactly how deadly this was. Ursul stands alone, seen from behind, bow and quiver on his back, and the official's verdict is grim because the guardians of Huey Dent can't do a thing about it. Far off into the wild, Klaus and Seraphina ride across a forest atop the colossal Jinbu. While Seraphina can't stop staring in awe, turns out even the smaller lizard Jinbu nearby is shocked at how insanely smooth the ride feels. He whips around to Seraphina with a grin so bright it could blind, asking what kind of country Huey Dent comes from, and then he laughs, saying he can't wait to meet the White Tiger. They keep going, and this little Jinbu leans in to say that 90 of Huey Dent is forest, bathing the whole place in a sacred, naturally overflowing vibe. Klaus blurts out whether Karen would have loved tagging along with him, and a nearby servant girl immediately blushes and blurts that she absolutely would have. The small Jinbu notices it too. Those words weren't just talk, they sounded genuinely heartfelt. The servant's raw, honest reaction snaps everyone's focus, so Klaus whips around to Ursul, now standing with their party, and shoots him straight. Are you worried about Karen? As soon as Klaus gets settled in Huey Dent, he listens while Ursul orders him to hit the guild up through their comm device, and Klaus blurts out thanks only for Ursul to wave it off like it's nothing. Once the talking ends, the whole party keeps pushing forward on foot, boots thumping hard on the forest path. Klaus presses deeper into the wild, staring in awe at how huge the forest really is, watching the wildlife with sharp eyes and realizing Huey Dent is a nation that genuinely honors living side by side with nature. Serafina doubles down on her point, saying that if they want to keep this natural balance intact, the nation relies on expert archers-hunter. The Ursel explains that people hold back logging so the forest can bless them, and that forces adventurers to play by a whole new rulebook, while Serafina lights up at the idea Klaus is blown away, realizing the nation isn't just defended by people, it's guarded by the forest itself. Their realization dies on the spot when everyone's faces snap into terror. Ursel screams about a pure white barrier, and right on cue, glowing arrows erupt out of thin air and slam into them. Serafina jolts back in pure shock and Klaus snaps, grilling her about this sudden hostility. Then he blurts out, "Are the hunters actually our enemies, trying to make sense of the attack as anything other than a brutal mistake?" Ursel snaps his guess out of the air, shoves him to hurry, and demands he use his power. Then Klaus whips around, baffled, and Ursel spells it out: Regenerate, Limit Break, and Mystic Awakening. Behind them, that arrow volley is still hanging, frozen mid-flight. He sprang into action while his companions watched Serafina knitted her brow and grilled Ursel, pointing out that Klaus could only heal living things, so how was he supposed to handle a barrage of arrows? Ursel didn't flinch. He just smiled and said Klaus would figure it out. As he flew through the sky, he sharpened his senses wide open, reaching out to feel the mana swirling all around him. His hunt finally locked on the source sat a full kilometer away, a deadly top-tier hunter. And when he realized he couldn't dodge that vicious volley, he snapped into action, forming a bright, glowing sigil in the palm of his hand. He shot his hands forward and blasted the explode spell. 2 glowing magic circles snapped into place right in the arrow's path, detonating every projectile in blazing bursts before they even got close. Even with everything he threw at it, more arrows kept homing in, and the gap between them and death shrank by the second. Then Ursel shouted to a stunned Serafina from below that Klaus had sparked the static in the air to rip off those blasts, and Serafina could only stare in disbelief that healing magic could pull off something this wild. With the relentless attack still crashing down, a brand new power exploded to life right from the force floor. Colossal roots erupted, twisting like living chains and growing at an insane pace, fed by an infinite growth spell. Colossal roots surged into a living shield, swatting the final arrows out of the air, while one tender tendril curled around Klaus and hoisted him up eyes wide, totally stunned as the distant archer got hit with the shock of a lifetime. He suddenly got trapped by the forest he came to control. Magical roots whipped around his legs, cinching him in place, and he just stared upward in stunned disbelief. Then he couldn't help but wonder what kind of ally Ursel had dragged in, because he'd never seen magic this wild and powerful before. Ursel greets the newcomer Shuya with a sly, knowing grin, and tells him they really do know each other. He teases Shuya for always trying to score wins with strange tricks, and right then, Klaus Ouroboros, perched on his shoulder, stares in shock as he finally realizes the attacker is none other than the long-awaited guard for the Demon Lord. With the archer finally subdued, Ursel leans in and demands answers. Did he know beforehand that a guard would show up in the western country with zero explanation? The young man trembles, sweating buckets, and can't get a single word out. He drops to the ground in a thunderous bow and blurts out a desperate apology, and Klaus, standing right there, jerks back in shock at that sudden, over-the-top show of remorse. Ursel speaks in a steady voice, telling him to calm down and swear that nobody's blaming him, then orders the archer to hear their side before deciding for himself, while Serafina watches the whole thing in tense, silent focus. Klaus stares on with a deep, thinking look, then admits, yeah, things are messy, but Shia is insanely strong, and he can't help smiling because they'll be battling side by side from here on out. Hearing those words, the archer snaps his head up, eyes blazing with emotion, and silently clocks the heartbreak etched across the other guy's face. The archer freezes in stunned silence, and then Klaus shoots down, grips his hand hard, and grins like a sunrise, telling him, face to face, how thrilled he is that they'll be allies. That's when the archer drops to his knees in full ceremony, introduces himself as the guard Shia Moslin, and swears his body and soul to Klaus, and it totally throws Klaus off. Ursel laughs and tells him to just call him Klaus and talk like a normal person, but Klaus cuts in immediately. This is an order. He looks a little shell-shocked by Shia's wild, zealous acceptance, but nods and says the arrangement is totally fine while Shia practically radiates joy, calling it a glorious honor to get a command from the Demon Lord as he watches them. And Ursel can't help but remark how fast everything has flipped as they push deeper through the forest, Ursel warns Klaus that word of the Demon Lord's arrival is probably flooding the whole country, so they should dodge towns for now. Shir can't believe it, asking how anyone could have reached them that fast, then frowns and admits he didn't even feel their approach. The moment they see a hulking, snarling beast looming on a nearby hill, their advance stops cold. Klaus blurts that the white tiger is already on a rampage, and Shia snaps back that it's already gone mad, so it's only a matter of time before a magic barrier traps it. Behind them, Seraphine wears a grim look and hurls them onward, snapping that the rampaging beast isn't the real danger. They shove onward up the hill, and then the truth hits hard. The white tiger isn't going berserk at all. Thick ropes pin it down and arrows jut into its body. A hooded figure looms over the tortured beast, running a brutal taming ritual. Klaus freezes in pure horror, staring like he can't possibly be seeing this. Seraphina breaks it down in panic. This beast isn't just some monster. It's the sacred guardian of this land, and if it dies, the territory itself will start to rot away. Then she hits the real truth. The real threat isn't the beast, it's the nobles driving its torture, and they've got to be stopped. When he hears that, Ursul's hand snaps into a tight fist, and he seethes. His warning got ignored, and he blames it all on his own weak power. He whips back to Klaus with raw regret, tells him they've hit an unbreakable barrier in the forest, one they can't dispel, and then he slams himself with a heartfelt apology. If only he'd acted sooner. None of this would have happened. Shia tries to soothe Klaus right then, urging him not to shoulder the guilt. Ursul whips around to the archer, Shia Moslin. Eyes blazing with desperation, he begs him to save their white tiger, insisting Shia must snap the beast out of its haze first. Right before Shia can even open his mouth, Klaus strides forward with a smug, confident grin, Ouroboros perched on his shoulder like a warning. He tells them, straight up, that this is exactly why they're here. With their mission locked in, the crew charges down the central street of Huey Des, pushing forward like they own the place. As they move forward, Ursul explains that breaking the barrier will take a magical tool from the guild. Then their talk gets slammed shut when a stern official steps in front of them and blocks the way. The official's glare pins Shia in place as Shia snaps back, furious, insisting the barrier isn't some dumb magical tool. Then he announces the Ahan Duchy will take care of the white tiger and orders everyone to leave it to them. His composure starts to crumble as he wonders what someone with no companions could even do. Then a bead of sweat rolls down his temple when it hits him. He could call his family to come running. Suddenly, the official yanks Shuya by the collar, snaps that the archer is a total joke of a guardian, and admits the demon lord will handle the beast himself, because apparently Shuya is just useless. Waus freezes as the official's words slam into his head, and he realizes they're talking about him and his healing magic. Then the officials turn and walk off, and he clocks the same bitter parallel between Shia's mess and his own past. He scribbled atop the great beast, listening while Ouroboros tracked how long it took to finish the magic tool's application. But his mind was screaming about the archer. Why would Shuya, of all people, who's that strong, act like this? Sure, meanwhile, he clung to the belief that he was nothing but an incompetent guardian, and he admitted the truth. They didn't choose a hero at all. They picked him from his clan when he was only 16. He remembered the forest's beauty and felt pure pride swelling in his chest, imagining himself as a guardian of that country, until a cold, dismissive voice snapped him out of it. They mocked every idea he tried to bring to life, and other adventurers even hissed warnings, "Don't use that magic, it's dangerous." But he insisted, "My gift is fire magic, so I'm just trying to fuse it with my archery." The memory kept dragging him back. He was right there with his fellow guildmates, even Ursul the guildmaster, but somehow they still didn't trust him, and as the guardian, he felt utterly cut off. The memory crumbled, and he stood there with his back turned to the very people he swore to protect, ignored, unrecognized, forgotten from afar. Klaus watched, and his face softened as the truth hit. He closed in on the archer and spilled his realization, telling Shuya that his fighting just clicked in sync with the forest, the way it all naturally belongs together, yet everyone else stayed on edge because they couldn't sense that same harmony. And with that, Klaus finally understood why Shuya's confidence was so broken. With a bright, reassuring smile, he looked Shia in the eye and told him, "It's okay." He swore he'd help him make friends, and that sudden kindness hit the archer so hard he went speechless, tears spilling as his chest tightened. He tells Shuya that the past doesn't matter anymore, and as soon as the words land, Seraphina jumps in with unstoppable excitement, urging Shuya to turn this fight into a loud, undeniable proof of just how incredible he really is. Shia's words hit the young archer like lightning so hard it pulls tears to his eyes. Still, he flashes a determined smile and nods, because he knows this is the second his true worth as a guardian gets put on the line. As he steels himself, Jinbu, the lizard companion, snaps that they're already behind schedule, saying the nobles they met earlier have already shown up at the scene. Just as Shuya and Seraphina finally spot what's ahead, the warning hits because out in the distance, Klaus and Ursul are frozen in gasping shock on top of the colossal holy beast Jinbu, staring as everything unfolds. Right in front of them, a magnificent white tiger snarls and thrashes in pure agony. Trapped by brutal chains hammered to the ground, the nobles close in, hauling those bonds tighter and tighter, and Klaus's head snaps into overdrive with one desperate command: save the white tiger. In front of a roaring pack of hunters, the massive white tiger, sacred guardian of legend, rips through the air in agony, chained up by brutal metal while Shia Moslin watches, panicking as the barrier cracks wide open, knowing they have to jump in and help. With the crowd roaring, Klaus steps forward, plants a hand over his heart, and declares loud and fearless that he's the Demon Lord and will take control of everything from here on out, while Commander Fowl in the back lets out a sneer, calling him a fool. He whips around to Fowl and blurts out an apology for butting in, but Fowl, way too impatient, just snaps at the Demon Lord to stop stalling and get on with it. The declaration leaves the crowd frozen in shock. Shia's eyes go wide as saucers, while Commander Fowl's face contorts into a full-blown mix of disbelief and furious outrage. Shock sparks into pure rage. Fowl sneers fly as he growls, asking how that white tiger is supposed to obey now, and he snaps a whip like Rod Up, vowing he'll beat the beast into submission with his own hands. She swings and screams for him to hold up, then he rushes in, panicked, insisting the hunters can't shield themselves out there if things explode. The standoff ratchets up, and Seraphina steps right into the gap, circular artifact in hand, glowing softly as she speaks up with nerves of steel, telling them to hold it, because she was the one who found this prey first. The artifact erupts in a blinding flare, and a shimmering magic barrier snaps into place around the chained white tiger, so fast the hunters jerk back, shocked as the roars from inside the enclosure grow louder and louder. She plants her feet as her magic erupts into a double shield fog on one side, sacred energy on the other, trapping the white tiger, while Klaus whips around to tell Jinbu to team up with Seraphina and keep the hunters safe. Jinbu nods and takes the order. The magical shield snaps into existence and jolts the hunters out of their fight, only to realize they're saved at the worst possible moment. And Shia Mo's lens blinks in total confusion as Seraphina blurts, "Run into the forest!" Shia hounds her right away, demanding to know who she is. Ignoring his question, she blurts out a jaw-dropping bombshell. She's claiming she's the Demon Lord's ally then. With a hard stare, she snaps at them to run, hurry up, and escape. Inside the barrier, the white tiger unleashes a rage-filled roar, its power surging and straining like it's about to rip the magic apart. The beast roars and rages, and Shia whips around toward Klaus with a confident grin, murmuring that his help is more than enough and everything's under control, while the other hunters in the distance hiss and murmur, all wondering what insane thing is about to happen. Then he turns to his comrades and roars that the Demon Lord's here so they can finally breathe, go straight for the forest, and he'll bet everything on the moment to slip his men to safety. As his men fall back, Shia whips out his massive blade and it crackles with raw energy. He declares he'll face the beast's thunder head-on, gearing up to absorb the hit straight as Klaus watches in stunned silence. Suddenly, a nearby tree erupts into splinters, sending a young woman tumbling onto the ground as she screams in pure terror. The blast jerks the retreating hunters to a halt, and Shia's swagger instantly collapses as he snaps his head around, panicking and calling out for Klaus and the others. Just as the unseen attack dropped out of nowhere, the man in the dark cape snapped into action. He shoved his hand forward, and a blazing magical sigil burst to life, blasting a shield of protective energy while he shouted the spell's name, Extreme Flame Blood. The blast finally faded, and the woman running for her life was safe, yet rattled to the core. The caped man caught up and demanded if she was okay, and after her shaky stammer, he snapped, "Move into the forest now." She threw a glance over her shoulder, eyes going wide in pure shock, and something clicked in her expression when she spotted his blue robe. Then he snapped his focus to the other hunters the blast had dropped. One man groaned through the pain, while his partner scrambled to hold him up. A soft, healing glow wrapped around them as the caped man unleashed another spell, and just like that, perfect heal sealed every wound on the spot. That brutal burst of magic hit like a knockout, and the great white tiger's rage instantly fizzled out. Moments earlier it was rampaging, but now it froze dead in its tracks, staring as a dark crystal embedded in its forehead caught the light. With the hunter's danger finally crushed, the caped man and Shia the archer stepped into a tiny clearing and stared each other down. "At last we meet," the caped man said, dead calm. "You didn't give the archer another thought? You swung your attention to the sacred guardian instead?" The tiger snarled with a deep warning growl, flashing its fangs. "You didn't flinch? Looking the beast straight in the eye, you spoke with calm confidence. White tiger, don't worry, I'll help you now." Before Shia could even process what he was about to do, the capeman unleashed infinite growth, and the ground beneath the archer exploded as thick, twisted vines erupted upward, snaking through the air to wrap around him. In seconds, the vines slammed into place, forging a tight wooden cage that pinned the stunned archer solid. And with the job done, the caped man just stood calmly on the now obedient white tiger, staring down at his trapped enemies. He stood there, calm in front of the pacified tiger and the ensnared archer, and that smug grin said it all, because finally, everyone was here to see the moment go down exactly like he wanted. Just as he thought he'd finally won, a fur-collared man erupted in pure rage, bellowing at them to stay out of it. Then an arrow tore through the air straight toward the tiger. Shoya loosed the projectile, but those magical vines still yanked it back in place, and the archer finally got his shot off, face set in grim determination, while Klaus stared, eyes bulging in pure disbelief at what had just happened. The arrow slammed into its target with a bone-rattling, solid thud. A brutal roar ripped through the white tiger the second that arrow slammed into the crystal in its forehead. Its mind dimmed and vanished, and the fur-collared official froze in horror at the total disaster. Right before anyone could even blink, a massive dark monstrosity crashed down from above, smashing the stunned tiger with brutal force and driving it straight into the ground, leaving everyone gasping, stunned that the beast got wiped out in one hit. He couldn't look away from the display, his grin stretched wide as pure exhilaration hit, and he just marveled out loud at how insanely powerful the Magic Emperor was. His reaction threw the whole crowd into a stunned spiral. People were murmuring that the white tiger had finally been beaten, and that Ursel had even stepped in for this training. Jinbu shot his chest out and bragged that this was his master's power. But that fur-collared official snapped, raging at the bound Shuya as he spat that this was all his win to claim. He even cursed the timing, saying that if Shuya had just snagged the tiger, they'd have walked away with massive wealth and fame. He yanks the young archer, Shuya, and demands answers about why the Magic Emperor was dragged along. Then the official stares in disbelief, basically asking, "So the hunters are teaming up now?" He speaks in a calm voice and says, "Since hunters can't protect themselves, they have to guard each other." Then he doubles down, "In this country, you fight while you keep your comrades safe." The official smirks it off, his face twisting with disgust, and claims Shia just orders the hunters straight into danger to feed his own selfish cravings. He clenched his teeth and swore that everything about this incident would be reported to the guild. His boss freezes for a split second, then rage erupts, boiling over as he snaps questions about how anyone could be so useless, while Shuya boldly dares to talk to him like that. Right as his tirade starts to roar, a female hunter cuts in. She steps forward, yells at him, and fires back that they were ordered to guard the country, not chase selfish motives, then demands, accusing him of lying, if he really thinks they were only protecting themselves. Reeling from the shock of that open defiance, the official's whole body shakes. Then Klaus slides in beside him, calm as ever, saying he's just repeating what Shia told him to. Right as a glowing magic circle ignites and an explosion trap erupts at the official's feet. Klaus glares down at the terrified man and snaps that he won't let anyone mess with the tiger hunt, vowing he'll do whatever it takes the way he sees fit, while the official can only stammer "Magic Emperor" like the words themselves are pure terror. With the official neutralized at last, Shia spins to Klaus and blurts his gratitude because Klaus crushed the foolish duke and opened the path. Now the white tiger is down on the forest floor, weak and vulnerable, ready for them to finish the job. Laos barrels toward the towering beast, slaps his hand over its strike back, and a glowing magic sigil ignites under his palm. Then he unleashes a massive healing spell, Perfect Heal. The spell finally hits, and a faceted gem crystallizes on the tiger's forehead, then blam! A flash of light, and its eyes snap open as the trapped magic inside it is forced to burst free. The white tiger snaps fully awake, and the brand new gem blazes under the lights while Klaus watches with a cool, steady calm, silently accepting that the creature is finally back in the world. To his shock, the tiger roars into speech, its voice thundering with ancient power, and it calls him by his full name, Klaus Finley, declaring, without doubt, that he's its master for this lifetime. With the bond finally sealed, Klaus surges ahead, lunges into the great beast's embrace, and blurts out an apology for being late while the tiger affectionately nuzzles him back like, "You're forgiven." The white tiger leans in and tells Klaus it's got a stubborn streak, then snaps its focus to Jinbu and growls that for a familiar, he's got a mouth way too sharp. It says everyone can see Klaus is the boss, and then it offers him a ride, but it snarls at Jinbu to scatter. Jinbu snaps back that the tiger should let everyone ride because they're all servants of the same master. He thrust his hands forward and felt the white tiger's thick, velvety fur swallow his grip, and the beast stood tall and proud with its brand new gem flashing as it stared up at its new master, daring him to admit that no coat could possibly be more magnificent. A grin cracked across his face as he gently scratched the creature's head, and the tiger had to announce loudly that Klaus was the only one allowed to touch it. He couldn't help laughing because it sounded just like his sister, Karen's clingy protectiveness. Then, with a bold snap of motion, he hauled himself onto the beast's back. "All right," he shouted to the crowd, perched at the edge of the clearing. "Let's ride back to town and report what happened." On the heart of Huey Dent's Central Street, Klaus Pat struts up with the massive white tiger, announcing they've finally arrived. Then he wastes no time. First, he's headed straight to the local guild. That bustling street is packed to the brim with people, and he can't stop wondering just how massive this crowd is right beside him. Shia Moslin blurts out, wondering if all this chaos is somehow about him, the Demon Lord's vessel. That's when the world flips out of nowhere, strides a man with slicked back blonde hair, and he calls him Your Highness Alfred? Klaus freezes because suddenly he's staring straight at the prince of the country. Alfred waves Shia to chill, then whips around to Klaus and tells him to step up right there in the official setting. Everyone should drop the stiff, formal act. Alfred then turns to Klaus, voice warm and steady, and tells him, "You're human, same as everyone here, so treat you like one." He takes in the calm, fresh air of the country and asks, "You feel that too, right?" He explains why he's here. He heard the seal on the sacred white tiger was in trouble, so he rushed to investigate. And when he glances at the calm beast beside Klaus, he grins because the tiger is already back to normal. Then the prince starts to get flustered, blurting that he was about to go after that daughter before he got sidetracked. Then he rushes to offer his heartfelt thanks. Klaus feels the weight of it all and insists he only wants to be treated like any other citizen. Alfred bursts out laughing, agreeing to rethink his whole approach. His face hardens into solemn truth, then he declares that Klaus saved the country, and that's why he deserves at least the smallest gratitude he can offer. Stunned by the royal gratitude, he blurted out a shaky, embarrassed reply, "Yes, thank you." Klaus accepts the invitation to the castle, and then right in the middle of it he blares, "I've got to report something." He points to a bound, drenched man at his side and calls him Dukahan. Prince Alfred's face turns cold as Klaus reveals the Duke's true plan. He's using hunters for his own selfish ambitions, trying to crush the white tiger and drown a sacred beast in needless pain. He reveals that Dukahan is trying to wrestle the white tiger into acting as Shuya's replacement, and the Duke's face instantly twists into raw panic. Right then, the young woman's voice slices through the tension. She steps up, calls the Duke father, and bluntly declares that he used the hunters for his own plan. She steps right up to him and demands he stop hiding behind excuses for Shuya, then hits him with the question, did he really get how pointless Shuya's life became? The Duke's panic floods in sweat pours as he can't even manage a single word. Klaus's eyes lock on her, and boom, his memory snaps into place. She's the princess he saved earlier. Right there, Shia leans in and praises her, saying she's a genuinely kind soul who even aided the hunters Klaus had been forced to leave behind. The princess swivels that fearless look on the group and loudly vows, "I'll vouch for him." She makes it crystal clear Shia's actions were nothing like what the public assumed. And when the praise hits, Shia gets flustered and blurts out, stammering that he was only trying to protect everyone. His reaction makes Alfred step up right away. He's praising him for a job well done and wiping away any past disrespect like it never happened. Alfred even calls him a great guardian, and Shia freezes, stunned, his cheeks burning. Then he zeroes in on Duke Ahan and drops the judgment like a hammer stripped of his title, thrown into exile on his own domain, and hit with one brutal warning: never, ever step outside it again. As the disgraced Duke is dragged off, the others burst into celebration like the weight is finally gone. The princess beams and slips her hand through Shia's arm, while Alfred slaps him on the back. Relief hits the whole group all at once. Breathing through the chaos, Alfred tells everyone they've had more than enough misery for one day, then orders them to grab lodging and sleep. He promises the real reward later, and Klaus gladly takes him up on it. Their animal companions? They've got a wilder plan. White Tiger and the lizard burst with excitement and demand a full-on celebratory banquet that very night. Shia agrees on the spot, calling it the perfect send-off for the White Tiger's triumphant return to the Demon Lord's capital. Then the princess whirls on Klaus and tells him to drop the tension and actually enjoy the festivities. Right as their plan is about to click, Ursel drops in from above, swooping down and calling Klaus the Demon Lord to his face, then orders him to stop cold, saying this path doesn't fit him, and he gestures for Klaus and Shulia to follow him as he heads toward a mob. Klaus and Shia land in a massive, lavish ballroom, the kind that sparkles under a giant chandelier, and Klaus's jaw just drops at the sheer size and jaw-clenching splendor of the whole crowd. He stammers that it's his very first time at a party like this, and he feels totally out of place, while Shia, way more at ease, shrugs and says, it's only been a long time for him. Their eyes snap to a young woman stepping down the stairs, and Klaus instantly clocks her, Princess Melia, stunned at how utterly different and breathtaking she looks in her formal attire. She beams and yells for her big brother to come see her, and that bright smile totally scrambles Klaus. He can't stop thinking Karen would look just as stunning in a dress like that. Just as Klaus starts drifting in thought, Shueya barges in and nails it. He's been thinking about Karen. With a smirk that says, I knew it, Shueya hands him a tiny rectangular comm device, and Klaus is stunned. He tells Klaus that the exact same device already made its way to Karen's location too, then urges him to try reaching her later, so Klaus, over the moon, gratefully takes it and thanks him again and again. That peaceful calm gets ripped apart when a bunch of nobles suddenly swarm Klaus, shouting every title they can find. Klausen, nephew, even Demon Lord, until his panic shoots through the roof. Nobles crowd in, bombarding him with non-stop questions spun from rumor and legend. Did he really haul Jinbu back in a storage bag? And did he truly take down the King Minotaur by himself? Klaus sweats buckets, eyes huge, trapped by the fame he can't escape. He staggered under the crush of attention, his vision spinning, as nobles crowded in while Shia and Ursel just told him to ride it out. Because one guest even swore he was the guildmaster. His mind was racing and panic hit hard as the crowd swallowed the streets. He begged for Selena's help in silence, terrified to ask where she even could be. A solid hand clamped onto his arm and yanked him away from the throne, Princess Milia. She demanded to know if he was okay because it was obvious he hated all that attention. In the calm courtyard of Huey Dent Castle, Selena stood alone and leaned into her comms mic. She asked the voice on the other end one thing: was it really okay for her to slip away from the party? Karen Finley's voice burst through. She shot up in bed, glowing with pure joy, and she confessed she'd been dying to talk to Selena for ages. And Selena met that excitement with warmth that lit up the room. Under moonlight, Selena strolled through a rose garden and told him Klaus had handed her the device so they could finally talk this evening. Then she leaned in and said there was something urgent she needed to bring up. Her face flickered with surprise, then a hot blush crept up her cheeks as she stared at her device, and she wasted no time. "Selena, you like my brother, don't you?" That blunt question hit Selena like a punch. She went completely silent, her face burning red as her mind snapped back to the night they first met, when she'd clung to him, crying. She blurts out an apology for startling Karen, then explains that her feelings aren't true romantic love at all. She's holding a tiny pendant because what she feels is something closer to reverent. As she keeps talking into the comms, she blurts that Klaus is everything to her. Karen freezes, face blazing as her words tumble out in a panicked stammer. She sinks onto her bed and tries to wrap her head around it because, yeah, Klaus is her important older brother, but they're not even blood-related. Selena's thoughts drift to a memory of that smiling classmate always right beside her, and she can't help thinking how incredible it must feel to have a love that's grown strong over all those years, and then She comes right back into the conversation, grins at Karen and tells her she absolutely loves hearing stories like that, then leans in and begs for more, and Karen instantly blushes with pure embarrassment. Her face brightens as she realizes just how kind Klaus has become, and she leans in to tell Karen how thrilled she is to hear it. That line locks something in place for Karen. She lifts her gaze, eyes blazing with resolve, and tells Alina she just wants her and Klaus to be happy. A real understanding clicks between them, and side by side they swear to chase the same goal, ending the curse of the Ouroboros once and for all. Karen answers with a firm, determined nod. She halted mid-step, eyes popping wide with shock, because deep in the grand arch hallway, Klaus stood waiting right beside Princess Milia, a woman she knew instantly. Princess Milia guided him straight to a locked set of doors, telling him it was the royal family's private resting chamber. Then she shoved it open and revealed it. He slipped inside, and the second his eyes landed on that massive canopy bed, he knew this room's luxury felt straight out of the Demon Lord's own chambers. Now he sat on a plush sofa across from the princess in her elegant gown, and his mind went blank. She said they could finally talk freely, yet he felt both grateful and totally lost, asking himself how in the world everyone knew about him and where he was even supposed to start explaining. Princess Milius flashed a grin and said her intel came straight from Ursel and Alfred, then admitted that the moment she met Klaus herself, she was blown away and instantly saw the truth behind their words. She told me that her father drilled into her training to truly understand her country, making her live and move like a hunter. And that's exactly how she'd first heard the whispers about the guardian beast. So she believed the rumors, hauled Shia in, and begged him to join Duke Ahan's subjugation party. As soon as she pictured the archer, her smile vanished into a heavy, gloomy face. She regretted not reading him sooner, because if she'd tried, maybe she could have stopped him. She snapped her focus back to Klaus and flashed him a heartfelt smile. Then she thanked him, because everyone was safe, only thanks to him and his crew arriving right on time. She goes on, admitting that his healing magic hit her like a wave. His personality hooked her hard, and the way he treats his companions makes her feel completely blown away. She boldly announces that she's sure he's the only one who can be her partner, and Klaus jolts back in pure shock, his whole mind spinning the second he hears that word. She scoots closer with a shy, rosy smile and whispers for him to say yes. Then he just freezes, staring back while sweat pours in, completely wrecked by her sudden confession. He drops his gaze, stammers out an apology, and still tells her straight. He's grateful for her feelings, but he hasn't even thought about marriage, and right now he's in no position to promise anything. Still refusing to back down, she shoves him onto the bed and leans in, telling him that if they can't do it right now, they'll make it happen anyway, so is that really a problem? As she talks, she already has her father's okay. The door to the room suddenly creaks open. Panic detonates in his chest as his heart hammers like a drum. Then he locks eyes with the horror of it all, pinned down by the princess. While someone steps in, Emilio murmurs his name, and his thoughts go into overdrive, scrambling to figure out who the visitor could be. As well, a familiar voice snaps through the tension. Big brother! And Klaus whips his head up, terror slamming into his face as he realizes his sister, Karen, just walked straight into the compromising scene. He jolts awake in bed to spot Princess Milia perched beside him, and before he can even catch his breath, she blurts out his name right as a comm device sits on the table within arm's reach. Before he can even react, she slams into him with a crushing hug, eyes blazing. Then she steps back, smiles bright and fearless, and introduces herself as Milia, the first princess of the Huey Dent Kingdom, declaring she's going to make herself his sister. Just as the moment hits, a voice blasts through the communication device on the screen. Karen pops up in a face mask, eyes bulging with pure shock, demanding to know what her brother is doing. Klaus panics and tells her to wait, but they both know it looks awful. He stumbles back from the screen to Princess Milia, panicking over the worst possible timing, then blurts out a flood of apologies because sure, he has no excuse, but he refuses to let his own sister end up hating him. She hears his heartfelt plea, her face turning warm with understanding. Then she tells him she feels the same, swearing she never wants to lose her precious family either. She steadies her breath and tells him, I'm stepping away for now, but I'm not quitting. Then she leans in and adds, I don't want people to hate me and nothing's going to scare me off. He tells her he can't spare a single worry, only breaking his sister's curse matters. Then he urges her to use the room freely as she leaves and turns back to the device. Panic and resolve slam across his face as he calls out for Karen to wait, swearing he'll fix everything. On the other end of the connection, Karen's face is pure icy rage as she glares straight from the screen, demanding to know who that princess was, while in a tiny inset, Klaus jerks back in terror, realizing his sister is in a truly awful mood. His brother's voice kept blasting through the device, telling her how he got trapped at the party and how he was pulled out right after. Then he leaned in and admitted he'd even heard the truth about his own fate straight from the princess. She leaned in, eyes locked on him, as he kept going, blasting questions like, how could nobles from some other country even know about him? She said nothing, just soaked up every word of his side of the story. His face popped up on the screen as he confessed everything he admitted. He was the one who begged Ursel to blast his accomplishments to the world. His eyes snapped wide with pure panic as he demanded to know why they were treating him like he'd committed a crime. She finally answered him, saying that if his reputation kept rising, it would make him impossible to ignore, and that bothered her. Still, she couldn't hide it. She admitted she wanted to be his strength, praying that one day everyone would finally look at him with respect and see him in a better light. Her grip snapped tighter on the communication device as regret churned in her chest. If she couldn't stand by him in person, then this was the only way she could support him. She swallowed hard after his confession, then thanked him for all that kindness and basically declared, "You're the most important person in the world. Yeah, I said it." A hot blush crept up her cheeks as his heartfelt words finally sank in. Her anger vanished in an instant, and a radiant smile lit up her face. Clutching the device, she burst out that she felt the exact same way. She tells him they'll stay in touch every day now, then reminds him, since he's stuck working as a receptionist, that he needs to sleep and rest up. And after one last good night, their chat finally comes to an end. Once the conversation ends, Klaus drops onto his bed with a crushing sigh, regretting that he never managed to tell her to stop spreading rumors about him. He steals his resolve unless that's the truth. Then he'll have to grind even harder, just to prove he can match the reputation she's built. Later that night, after the party finally ends, he slips to the doorway and peeks out, heart pounding, making sure the coast is clear before he dares to head back to his own place. He heads back to the far end beneath a sky full of stars, then proudly calls out that he's back the moment he gets near. Inside his room, he spots the white tiger and Ouroboros waiting on his bed like they've been there forever. The tiger greets him and admits it was right on the edge of dozing off. Then it turns serious and tells Klaus to touch the jewel so he can link up with Cecil. After the teacher's command, the whole class rushes forward and taps the object, and boom! A blinding burst of light explodes out of it, splitting into a storm of shimmering fragments. Delight drops him into a whole new place. Bam! There he stands in front of ancient ruins with Ursel, Princess Milia, Shia Moslin, and the others. And Ursel points it out. The shrine of Lemuel. Klaus freezes for a beat, then shuts his face into stone, snapping into focus and pushing to fix this fast because he wants to get home. He and his crew burst into a giant ruined chamber where broken pillars clawed up from the dark, and there it was, a hulking, many-headed dragon, coiled tight around a dais. One head slid down, sharp reptile eyes locking onto the group, and with a smug snarl it demanded to know what brought such fragile humans here. The beast's side unleashed a jolt of raw terror in him. He knew it instantly, the evil dragon Ouroboros. Its magic radiated pure malice, crushing the air from his lungs, but Just when fear tried to freeze him, something hotter took over, a blazing determination to tear the monster down. In the blink of an eye, a brutal surge of power detonated inside the chamber. A dragon boomed out a deep, rumbling laugh that shattered through the broken stone, and Klaus's crew suddenly lost their footing, scrambling through the chaos like they had been hit by a storm while the beast gloated, sneering that they were the last ones left and daring them to figure out what they could possibly do now. That desperate moment snapped his mind back. He saw himself as Cecil, shouting at Marin, begging her to flee for her life, even if she was the only one left who could actually get out. She spun toward him, sorrow and love burning across her face. Then she smiled softly and begged him to take care of the children, sealing it with her last words, a heart-on-sleeve confession of how much she loved him. The nightmare finally hit its ending. He froze, powerless, as a blinding surge ripped open the space and yanked Marin and another young girl out of reach, and in his head, his own frantic voice kept shouting her name, begging in a desperate, futile roar right as they vanished. She stood there, utterly frozen, as the massive dragon in front of him started to glow, its huge body cinched in swirling bands of ethereal light, while a brutal incantation thundered through the chamber and the eternal seal came to life. The seal didn't stand a chance. Crunch! The dragon's jaws slammed shut with a brutal snap, and the magical restraint shattered like glass. A burst of dark energy tore through the gap, and Klaus threw up his shield just in time to block the blast. Just as the draconic powers erupted, a whole new force crashed into the scene, pure white and blazing with celestial fire for a mane and tail. As if the heavens were walking, it stepped in with unreal grace, a masked face crowned by one spiraling horn. The moment Klaus saw this new being, memories exploded inside him, yanking him back to another time, another nightmare. He was just a kid again, eyes blazing with terror, and his voice shook as he shouted that name. He couldn't shake the beast from that day. Its name clawed at his thoughts like a whisper. Crews back then, he and Marin were just kids, trapped in the eye of a brutal power storm that roared and tore at everything around them. The memory sharpened into something brutal, and he dropped to his knees, smashing the ground in pure anguish while screaming Marin's name like that crushing, suffocating weight of his own helplessness had never, ever left him. He whipped his tear-soaked face toward the beast, voice cracking with gut-wrenching sobs as he begged forgiveness and swore he'd never, ever leave it alone again, while Marin lay motionless nearby on the cold ground. While the boy sobbed, a shadowy figure swooped in unseen, snatching the fallen star-shaped relic and feeling its pure, raging magic pulse in their grip. Then the beast swung its attention back to the cloaked boy, treating him like the quiet witness to old echoes. Ursul's booming laughter rips him out of his memories, and Klaus just stands there, frozen in shock, whispering whether this could really be true. The laughter snaps into a brutal coughing fit from the red-haired man beside him. Klaus scrambles to keep him upright, then the man gasps, begging for Albert's name while Ursul lifts the glowing, star-shaped object and its light surges brighter. The scene snaps into another memory. Klaus, standing beside Marin before the mythical beast. Crew, then the world flips again, showing him with a roaring crowd cheering his name. After he sealed Ouroboros, he emerged as Cecil, the Demon Slayer's leader, and everyone celebrated him like a legend. That old glory's weight and this nightmare of a crisis slam into him at once, and he gasps, tears flooding his face while a voice shouts his name, fighting to pull him out of the chaos. His thoughts dive straight into the past, back when he was just a sick kid, trapped in bed while Kylan, a tiny tiger-striped creature, stayed by his side, weak as a whisper. He asks if the master is hurting anywhere, and when Kylan confirms it, relief hits him hard because they finally knew, and they could help. It's revealed that Kylan is Marin's familiar, built to act as a living vault for the Saint's power, meant to seal Ouroboros right to the core, but since his power hadn't fully awakened yet, he was only told he was there to purify. The memory jerks back once more to a young man with clasped hands. Praying hard, he thanks the heavens and credits Kylan for saving them all from Ouroboros. Then his voice breaks as he begs for Karen, that young girl, to be protected too. His prayer booms into the endless, empty sky, and a faint, sorrowful apology just hangs there like it can't let go. On a bustling city street, Klaus strides along with a book clutched tight, while Kylan, his little tiger familiar, sits perched on his arm until his old boss, Fowl, storms up and spits out that Klaus has bought enough. Raging over his choice, Fowl demands they hook back up with the group, whining that the teleportation magic tool costs a fortune and that a plain carriage would have done the job. He yanks Klaus by the shoulder and blurts his name, barking it like impatience itself while Klaus just shuts his mouth, standing off by himself beside Fowl as his two subordinates lurk behind them, watching. Just as the Fowlsmen lunged to drag Klaus straight back to the magic core, a brutal shockwave exploded, blasting him away, and Princess Melia stood there with her hand extended, unleashing the defensive magic that cut through everything. The sudden interruption blasts the chaos apart. Foul sputtering fills the air, and everyone stumbles in confusion. demanding answers about what's going on while his subordinates, still shaking off the explosion, snap in anger, asking who that young woman is. She stays cool and asks straight up if they were trying to kidnap Klaus, then admits she was drawn in by his amazing presence and followed him only to lock eyes with them and tell them, sharp and brutal, that they must be hopeless for not seeing his real worth. Her commanding words shut the man down cold and right behind her. Klaus let out a shaky breath, relieved that she was still standing strong, not what he expected. He trips and hits the ground, staring up at her in shock as Kylan slides in beside him. And Princess Melia leans over with perfect poise, asking politely but firmly if she can help him and his sister. Her face lights up with a warm, encouraging smile, and she urges them to hunt down Kylan together. Right now, Klaus, clutching the little tiger and the turtle like Genbu in his arms, tilts his head and looks at her, hope sparking in his eyes. He stares at the map, following Princess Melia's intel, and their buddy Alfred chimes in, saying this is the first time he can actually feel Kylan's magical presence nearby. Klaus gets ready for the search and hammers home his gratitude to Alfred for getting them the newest long-range communication devices. And Melia just shrugs it off, accepting the gear from the faculty, like, of course that's how it should be. With those comm devices locked in, Klaus barks the order to move out. Then Alfred takes point, telling the whole crew, including the dark-haired adventurer, to split up and scour their assigned zones one by one, and she snaps in immediately, fully on board. As she pushes deeper into the thick woods by herself, a loud rustle snaps out of a nearby bush. She whips around so fast you can almost hear the tension in the air. Her eyes fly wide as she spots it, and she taps her communicator like her life depends on it, whispering, "I found what we've been searching for." Right in front of her, a glowing mythical beast shimmers in a water pool, blazing with otherworldly energy, and the adventurer's face tightens with pure resolve. She thinks they've finally found each other. Whispers a word only her mother can hear, then snaps, "It's my turn," ready to march forward and carry out her duty. Standing outside an inn, Selena grips a tiny object in her hand and stares at it like it's the last piece of her life face set. Heart locked in, she's finally accepted what's coming, stealing her own resolve to become a Kylan, and tells herself this burden is hers alone, a message meant for Klaus. Meanwhile, Alfred leans in towards Selena, his voice shaking with sincerity as he begs, "Please let him and his crew stay close, just in case you need us." And she exhales, tired but grateful, thanking him while apologizing for the hassle she's bringing to Hector. Klaus buzzes with excitement beside Karen, telling her he's already begged Selena to jump in. Karen lights up immediately, fists tight, and she shares the same blazing drive for both Selena and getting herself involved. In the middle of that breathless quiet, Selena tilts her head up faint, but determined like she's daring the world to wait, because it'll only be a little longer. Deep in the woods, Klaus mounts the white tiger and rockets forward. Then he spots a distant figure, blazes out that he's found her, and the tiger snaps him into motion, urging him to get on and rush. As they close in, Klaus's mind goes into overdrive. How on earth is he supposed to get the Iroko scale? Still, he refuses to back down. Up ahead, Selena's silhouette is swallowed by a dark, ominous aura. A blinding flash detonates right where Selena stands, and Klaus snaps his arms up to block the glare. Then, in that radiant chaos, a tiny white mythical beast drops into a pool of water, horned and masked-faced, with a flaming core blazing from its main material. Klaus can barely get the words out. What is this light? Shock snaps into recognition. He blurts it out like a command, calling for a Kylan, and without a second thought he orders, "White tiger, pin it with your lightning." The great beast roars back in agreement, then sinks into position, ready to strike. Watched as the Kylan shot off like a comet, a streak of white and roaring flame, and the white tiger and Ouroboros instantly clocked just how fast and terrifying it was. Then the adventurer leaned in, saying the saint had taken on the Kylan's magic, and asking straight up if Klaus was hunting the creature. He barked back at the Kylan, then snapped an order at his crew. "You two, go!" As he launched the white tiger and the little Jinbu straight into a charge to cut off that mythical beast. Right before his guardians could even close in, the braided swordswoman rocketed past them, launching high into the air, snatching Kylan mid-flight and disappearing into the clouds like a flash of lightning. She gaped in disbelief and yelled that it could fly, and the woman beside him didn't panic. She had a plan, give her time. She swore she'd catch the Kylan and bring back its scale, but first she needed his trust, and when Klaus stared into her fierce eyes, he nodded and agreed. The braided swordswoman touched down nearby, eyeing Kylan's magic with a sharp remark, then turned to Klaus with a soft smile, apologized like it was nothing, waved off her own interference, and left him completely stunned by how casually she brushed it off. The nearby woods were completely hidden, and the adventurer and the white tiger watched the whole exchange unfold. As they stared on, the Kylan shot upward again, one pounding thought drilling through its mind-mother. The next day, they rolled into the town of Hugh Dent, and Klaus stared at one of the buildings, relief flooding his chest for the help he'd just gotten. She whips around to face Princess Milia and spots that heavy, gloomy mood. Then he jumps in fast, telling her to shake it off, not to feel so crushed, and swearing he'll be back. As Shuya offers his reassurance, he clamps a firm grip on the archer's arm, and Milia, eyes brimming with tears, demands why her father won't let Shuya cross the border with him, while Shuya snaps back that as her guardian, he's sworn to protect the holy beast and the demon lord alike. He grins warmly and immediately says, "Of course," while Princess Milia looks up at him with pleading eyes, begging him not to forget her. A deep blush floods her face when she finally realizes she's gotten used to having him around. With their farewells traded and the air buzzing, the whole crew marches through the town gates while Princess Milia stays back, waving her heart out until they vanish from sight. Their journey tears them out of town and deep into a wild, lush forest. Then the Duke of Sarek's generosity kicks in, and suddenly they're riding alongside new companions on top of the massive adamantite beasts and even a white tiger. As they ride on, the braided swordswoman tells Klaus that the Clued family is here staying put. Then she squints at him and asks what's wrong, because he looked totally clueless that they'd landed in Woodville. She talks about Terald, a nation drenched in overflowing nature, so blessed that it can survive on its own for the most part, turning it into a stubbornly isolationist place with barely any trade with the outside world. He fires off a question to his companion. Can they even get into a place like Terald? The headband-wearing woman's face tightens and she lays it out. Entry is brutal, and only the fairest Dukeley house and the guardians of the holy beast have been allowed to stay since Cinefolia was founded. Even the great saint's authority can't pry them through that gate. Right beside them, Shia keeps her eyes forward, already sensing the trouble they're about to hit next. They follow his gaze, and there it is, their destination glowing on the horizon. Then a voice booms, "You've reached Reynold." On the shore, Jinbu the sacred guardian and the holy beast stand shoulder to shoulder, staring across the water at the jagged mountain island nation in the distance. As the boat skims the water, Klaus and his crew lean in closer, eyes locked on the land that is drawing nearer, their faces blazing with anticipation. He steps through a massive, old-school gate, and his eyes snap upward as the city's wild, beautiful architecture reveals itself, while delicate petals swirl through the air around him. Inside, a local man steps up and greets them, stunned that their clothes look unlike anything he's ever seen, while Klaus and the headband woman can't stop taking in the sights, completely mesmerized by this gorgeous, brand-new cityscape. As they stroll, he clocking it, these streets are packed almost entirely with men, and a weird, uneasy reluctance to move ahead of another guy suddenly creeps into his head. Their guide reads his mind and blurts it out since they're outsiders. Someone's been watching them right nearby. Two hard-eyed men stand guard, staring like they're measuring every breath. He stayed on edge, telling Ursel the town's vibe felt twisted, especially when it came to Selena, while his companion, totally clueless, happily blurted that they'd finally found a girl named Sakura. Like she'd been called by her name, the young woman in a floral kimono snapped her head up from the stone path petals swirling through the air and greeted him with a formal bow as Demon Lord Klaus Finley, claiming she was the guardian of the Blue Dragon. He sprinted to her side, telling her to get up and to start valuing her own life. Then he explained how uncomfortable it made him when she treated him like he was above her, even asking her to just see him as an equal. Moved by his kindness, she bowed and called him a gracious master, then introduced herself as Sakura Ferris, the guardian of the holy beast. As she talked, Klaus couldn't shake the feeling she looked a lot like Jinbu, and he started wondering if she was another guardian from some faraway land. With the pleasantries out of the way, Ursel snapped him forward and they charged up a long stone staircase toward a traditional estate hidden behind a bamboo fence. They pulled up to the residence, slid onto the open veranda, and wasted no time starting their conversation with the people inside. In the middle of their chat, Ursel leaned in and asked Sakura if she had any servants. She shot back that she didn't. Then Klaus cut in, staring around as if he'd cracked a clue, saying the town looked like it was packed with men only and demanding to know why. In Terald, she said it's just common sense that men go out to work and women stay home to guard it all, and that stubborn way of living is exactly why women from foreign places like her get treated like outsiders. As she spoke, Ursel leaned in and praised Sakura as a ridiculously gifted guardian, saying she was the perfect pick for anything that had to be handled outside. Then Klaus nodded hard, admitting he and his crew couldn't stand the locals' unrelenting stares anymore. A steaming cup of tea was thrust into her hands, and in that quiet moment she thought, back home, Karen and Selena worked just like this too. But here, people didn't even bother to notice. Still, she took a sip and realized the local tea hit her taste buds perfectly. Her face exploded into a radiant smile, cherry blossoms seemingly floating around her, and she blurted that the tea was delicious, so good she could totally get used to it. And from a short distance, Klaus and Karen watched her real joy shine through. He watched her closely, and realized that behind all that strictness, Sakura had this unexpectedly gentle soul. Sakura then admitted that even though she'd gotten used to the country's ways, it still crushed her that nobody around her ever noticed the effort she was putting in. Right as Ursel opened his mouth to talk about the blue dragon, boom! A brutal thud slammed the ground and a gigantic dark-furred beast crashed down just outside the veranda, shocking everyone to the core. Right from the chaos, a man with long, spiky, light hair burst into view, grinning like he owned the moment. Then he shouted to Sakura that she'd been left waiting, and that it was time to march off and face the demon lord. Sakura snapped her head up in shock, staring at him like, "Rahaku, what are you doing here? I thought the reception was already over." Rihaku burst out with a pair of magnificent feathered wings, apologized for being late, and the moment Klaus saw it, he went right into introducing himself as the Demon Lord's representative. He's stunned when the wingman bows and introduces himself as Rahaku Gilburn, the first prince of the Ringgold Kingdom. Then Klaus can't help but fumble out thanks for his manners, only for Rahaku to grin and tell him it'd be simpler if they dropped the formalities, since he's used to that. Right there, Sakura slips in a calm offer. She tells Rahaku she'll whip up some tea. She softly taps his shoulder, pulling his attention like a spell. Rahaku whips her gaze to Rahaku's side with a reassuring smile, telling her to stop stressing. Everything's going to be okay. Then he asks, straight up, if he can borrow the kid. As Rahaku and Sakura stride away together, Klaus just watches in silence, stunned. Why would a prince ask for something like that himself? Later, the whole group huddles close as Ursel lays out the terrifying truth: no one can ever awaken the blue dragon. Not for a second, Kylan's healing magic was exactly what he wanted to dig into next. But the hunt has smashed that plan. And Sakura steps in, saying it's the blue dragon's presence that's kept people out of the mountains for days. Ursel wastes no time. She declares they'll hunt down Kylan and that they'll go to Klaus and his crew to ask for help, and Klaus immediately says yes. Herschel's smile drops and he fires off a sharp question. Are they really sprinting against the clock? He cranes his head up, a bead of sweat sliding down his brow, and hesitantly gives Ursel's verdict a shaky nod. Ursel accepts his answer, then brushes it off and tells him he's done for the day, straight up leaving the room as he walks out. Ursel can't help but think about how messed up this country feels, while Klaus is left staring, alarmed and desperate to know what just went down. Klaus sinks into deep focus at the Rindled Inn, a bouquet of flowers waiting beside him, while his whole world narrows to one mission: shredding the Uraboros curse, and he keeps wrestling over a precise healing magic he's sure can finally save his sister, Karen. He plucked one perfect flower from the bouquet, wearing hope and apology all at once, and with Morris the mage's training still burning in his bones, his magic control leaped forward, then confidence slammed into him as a complex magical sigil finally bloomed above the delicate flower, like he might actually pull this off. His mind snaps back to Karen, weak, trapped, and covered in those dark curse marks, and he realizes this flower is the closest match he can find. So he digs in with sheer focus, pours his magic into the stem, tweaks its wavelength to copy that life-blackening curse, and click, the flower petrifies right in front of him. This experiment is the payoff of endless hours spent dissecting ancient texts. He's been obsessing over the curse, tracking how it tightens and clogs the lifeline itself, like a deadly blockage cutting off the flow of blood. He finishes his magical scan of the cursed flower and braces for the next make-or-break move, pumping his own healing magic into that dangerous, delicate object. Then a gentle glow blooms from his palm. A brilliant burst of light screams from his hands as he unleashes his power. But just as fast reality hits, it's not as easy as blasting the flower with magic. The curse's vile energy has to be dragged out and wiped clean, and the flower stays locked in stubborn stone, proving how brutal this fight really is. Somewhere else, a magical comms device sits on a comfy pillow, and through it, Klaus' voice cuts through with pure resolve. He swears he'll do this for Karen, using his own strength, not Kylan's. In her room, Karen grips the device so tight her knuckles ache. Her face twisted with worry as the silence suddenly hits, because all she can think about is seeing her brother again, but then a nasty fear slithers in. If they weren't tied by blood, would he still treat her like his precious sister? That terrified, flustered reaction crackled from the communication device, and it punched panic straight into Klaus's chest. He stared at the thing, blurted out an apology to Karen, and his voice shook with full-on alarm. Back in her room, Karen shot upright, saying late-night exhaustion had knocked her out for a moment. And with a soft smile, she told him she used to say that, as a kid, then her face clouded, she was drowning in work, swearing 24 hours just wasn't enough, and she confessed how desperately she'd fought to learn healing magic. He let out a little chuckle through the device and admitted he still remembered. He even recalled her childhood promise that she'd be his bride, smiling at how sweet and honest old Karen used to be. Then Karen huffed, cheeks puffed with mock outrage, and snapped back that she wasn't just cute anymore. She'd grown up strong and stunning, too. Then she whispered, cheeks warming with a blush, and confessed that back then she was his and his alone. She tossed out a casual warning, "Don't strain yourself too hard," then said, Good night, but Karen opened her mouth to answer and froze like a thought was clawing to get out but wouldn't. The line suddenly went dead. She jerked up, cheeks burning as his words finally hit her. What does that mean? She gasped. Burying her face in her pillow, a wild, terrifying idea surged into her head. Was he really trying to say that? She thrashed in her bed, totally rattled, because the thought of confessing her feelings, watching him accept them with zero drama, would not leave her alone. She snapped upright, a hot new thought slamming into her. What if he had no idea they weren't even related by blood? The truth hit like a thunderclap, and she knew she had to find out for Rhea. Klaus tells his crew that even though Kylan is still missing, its ability to fly makes it the key they can't afford to lose. Ursel watches on with a tired look, while Alfred just stays stone calm. As they push deeper into the forest, Serafina blurts out that they've arrived, and it shocks Klaus out of nowhere. Right behind them, Ursel tells the others that trying to recruit the Blue Dragon will blow their search wide open, and everyone nods like they've already decided. When they finally reach their prize, it's a jaw-dropping waterfall that smashes down a sheer cliff, spraying mist like a storm. Serafina can't help but gush about the view, and Klaus echoes her, then lets out a wistful sigh, wishing Karen could have seen it too. Hearing him out, Serafina whips around and sees just how hard he cares for Karen. Then she meets his eyes, smiles gently, and gives her warm, heartfelt agreement. Moments later, while Kylan paused in the clearing, it suddenly growled something unfamiliar was closing in. Still, Klaus didn't break his focus. He insisted the Blue Dragon was nearby. The second he speaks, the truth explodes out of the surrounding forest, roars a magnificent blue dragon, and it's so powerful and breathtaking you can't even blink. The moment that creature shows up, Ursel shoots forward like he's itching to act, shouting that he's going to cast a spell and bring the dragon crashing down while Klaus panics because he can't feel a shred of hostility, only raw magical power, and right then Kylan yells urgently at his master. Before anyone could react, Sakura and Rahako step right in front of the group and the dragon. Rahako declares they'll be the decoys. Sakura whips her blade free as the blue dragon lunges and Serafina recoils in pure horror. Terrified of what one single hit could do, Klaus just stands there, stunned, while Ouroboros shouts that its magic is getting shut down like the dragon has officially snapped. Sakura flashes a wild grin and rips out her absolute sky sword move, commanding the blue dragon to slam down on the earth while Rahaku rockets through the sky above, closing in fast on the beast. The dragon gets blasted out of the air, tumbling through the sky as a brutal pain shriek tears the clouds apart, and Klaus just freezes in awe. She's swinging a sword that huge like it weighs nothing. Alfred roars his approval, and Rahaku snaps orders to Jinbu protect everyone on the ground. He snaps to the truth his consciousness disconnect ability is totally useless if he can't even touch the dragon, and then it clicks. Sakura and Rahaku are moving together, baiting the beast down from that sky-high perch, just as Alpha points out right beside him. He grabs the moment and shoves the white tiger ahead, barking, "Go now," as he orders it to lock onto the blue dragon because they're taking it on together. With a thunderous roar, the great beast explodes upward in a brutal leap, and he braces, standing dead steady on its back, arms flung wide as he's seconds away from striking. As he finally closes in, the blue dragon rips the sky open with a deafening roar. Pure force slams into him. He screams as a magical sigil ignites on his hand, and his mind tumbles straight into black, and the stunned white tiger drops out of the sky like a meteor falling. Then the blue dragon snaps it up midair in its crushing jaws. Alfred below can only stare in terror, realizing the demon lord's power is pure, reckless audacity. The dragon's eyes stay totally vacant. Alfred screams that its consciousness still hasn't come back then. Out of sheer shock, the beast swallows the white tiger whole, and Sakura erupts, shouting Klaus's name as Rahaku and Jinbu watch the horrifying thing happen right in front of them. Klaus is trapped inside the beast's belly, ringed by the blue dragon's corrupted magic, and the second he sees it, he clocks the familiar miasma just like before. He has to cleanse it fast. With a grim apology on his lips for the agony he's about to unleash, he clenches his resolve and slams his own power into the dragon's magic to force it back to purity. After his choice, a blazing sigil ignites on his hand, and as he finishes scanning the dragon's energy, that strange voice he heard keeps nagging at him. Then he snaps with a fierce shout, blasts his power, and triggers a forced magic restoration that swallows the berserk beast in searing, brilliant light. The spell hits like lightning outside. The white tiger gets shoved out of the blue dragon's mouth without a scratch. Then the dragon's whole body clears up, shining bright, and glides through the sky like everything's finally normal, while Rahaku and the others stare in stunned disbelief, praying they're not imagining it and wondering if it really snapped back to its senses. Climbing onto the now calm blue dragon, Klaus straightens up and proudly introduces himself as its new master, soothing it with a gentle word that everything's okay and that it's not alone anymore until the dragon stares back. tears gathering in its eyes with pure relief and gratitude. Overjoyed, the blue dragon presses in close and nuzzles Klaus with all the love it can't hold back, telling him it's been aching to meet him alone ever since Ouroboros was stolen. Klaus soothes the great beast, patting its snout and praising it for staying strong all this time. The dragon keeps showering Klaus with affection, practically swearing he's its master, and Klaus strokes its head, quietly stunned by how emotional it is, nothing like that earlier rampage. He still can't shake the voice he heard, then raises his hands and casts the spell. As they drop back down to the ground, Klaus whips around and praises Sakura, gushing that her sword dance is gorgeous, so Sakura instantly turns beet red, denying she's even worthy of that kind of praise, while Rihaku just watches with a smug, knowing smile. He whirls toward Rihaku, Sakura, Alfred, Seraphina, and the sacred beasts, pouring out a heartfelt thank you for their help. Then he strides right up to Rihaku. The wingman grins and names himself Klaus Dono, admitting he'd already clocked him, and says he's got a favor to ask. With fierce determination in his eyes, he pressed his request and demanded that Klaus join him to change this country. Klaus's sudden proposal hit him like a shock, and he immediately snapped, "Sakura, wait!" But Sakura turned to Rihaku, staring in pure disbelief, begging him to explain what he was really saying. After a beat, the two dropped into their seats facing each other, while the newly tamed blue dragon lounged nearby, and Klaus finally admitted that the country's stiff rules and locked-in way of thinking had been gnawing at it. Rihaku leaned in, eyes sharp, and said, Klaus, since he was a prince, hadn't been poisoned by the nation's ingrained ways yet. With that burning thought in his chest, Klaus slammed down his decision. If Prince Rihaku was really ready to make a stand, Klaus would give him full cooperation, even if he couldn't see how it would work. Then Rihaku admitted the truth. He'd been fighting for change all by himself for ages, and now he was right on the edge of failing. Rihaku's face tightened as he finally spilled his brutal plan. He wanted Klaus at his side to crush the current king of their nation, and once the stern ruler flashed in his mind, his resolve hardened into iron. He'd remake this country, no matter what it cost. Rihaku's thoughts hardened into one treacherous mission: kill a king. The declaration hangs unspoken in the air then. Sakura snaps her breath in, eyes blazing with pure shock. Shock hangs in the air, then Klaus strides up to the prince, square in the face, refusing to let Sakura's nightmare be brushed off, demanding to hear why Rihaku is even thinking about rebellion, and making it crystal clear that you never, ever get used to this. Rihaku's face tightens with unwavering conviction as he admits he's always felt something in their country is rotten. And then he hits you with the real reason his own mother was cast out for daring to be an outsider. Sakura freezes at the sudden fashion twist and blurts out, "Why is Prince Rihaku, why are you and even Klaus mixed up in this?" Klaus is still trying to wrap his head around it when he fires back. Why would Rihaku serve the princess if his own father already hated his mother? Rihaku's mind drifts straight to his father, the king of Terald, replaying that brutal anguish in his head, because the king kept begging his own mother to accept Rihaku's fate, only to get shot down again and again. Memories slip away and the whole group goes quiet like the moment already passed. They just talked about how the government won't budge and how a request was sent to Ouroboros and Klaus's crew to take on a subjugation mission. Rihaku clenches his fist and digs into the earth, swearing that for his mother and for women like Sakura, he's going to strike and topple everything with a full coup d'etat. Then he drops to the ground fast, head bowed so low it screams humility, admitting his request is completely outrageous. Yet he still begs Klaus and his crew to help him change the country. Klaus locks in his firm expression and nods. He hears the prince's resolve loud and clear and confirms what he promised earlier: he'll lend his full cooperation right here. Hearing that, Rihaku's face suddenly brightens as he whips around to his crew. Sakura Ferris practically bursts out, saying that, with Prince Rihaku as king, they'll slowly reshape the whole country. Rihaku nods, but snaps that they've got no time. He can't stick around for long, so they need to map out a plan right now. He gathers everyone close and admits his words can't reach his own father, the king, so he begs to borrow Klaus's authority, swearing the king might actually hear the demon lord's side if they speak through him. Sakura grimly tells them, if they refuse our plea, we'll be thrown into a war against the whole country, and Klaus and the others won't survive that. Rihaku nods, then smirks and says, good news, we've still got a way in. Rihaku leans forward, eyes locked on the enemy, and makes his shocking move. He names the nation's greatest general in history and vows to end him with one final, decisive strike. Under a crescent moon, Klaus stood on the veranda, lost in thought about how he ever caved into this, while Ursel called from behind Kylan, sleeping on his shoulder. He tells Ursel why he's stepping up if the demon lord is being asked for help, then he answers in the same spirit. Right beside him, Rihaku snaps that he can't stand a world that refuses to see people for what they truly are. Then he lays out the plan. Bring down Aizen and the whole army's morale will collapse, and Alpha and Ursel both nod, locking it in as the heart of their strategy. She listens, and Sakura's eyes widen just a little as the great saint's earlier panic flashes back, hitting her with the full weight of what's about to happen. Haruhako watches the blue dragon wrap itself around Klaus' shoulders, and he mutters to himself that this kid has grown up fast. Under a sea of stars, an unseen voice rages in frustration, begging, "Where are you?" at their superior, and fuming that their boss just won't hear a word about this mess. The story rockets straight into Renaruto Castle, towering above everything stacked in massive tiers that claw up into the sky. Up in the sky rockets the blue dragon, now absolutely massive, while Klaus sits on its back like he owns the clouds, and down below the Taro soldiers stare in shock as one of them yells, "That's the blue dragon and somebody's riding it." The great beast slams into the castle courtyard with a thunderclap, blasting up clouds of dust and dismounting as it stands unshaken before the stunned guards. He clenches his fist, steels his nerves, and tells himself he's got to stand tall with pure dignity and majesty. Klaus Finley strides up, barks a command to the soldiers, and declares, "I've brought that rampaging blue dragon back to its senses. I'm here because I need to confirm one thing with the king." The guards split apart, and murmurs swirl in his wake as he strides straight through their ranks, unyielding headlong for the main keys. He locks eyes ahead, jaw set with iron resolve, and his voice snaps out a crystal-clear order. "Everyone, make way." At his command, the Terrell guards split apart like a gate opening, and he strides straight through the gap with unstoppable purpose. His advance slams to a stop the moment a voice calls out to him, and the speaker confirms, exactly like the great saint's letter promised, that he's verified the demon emperors are real. The man in ornate robes drops to his knees, hand gripping the hilt of his sword, then introduces himself Eisenkraut, a general sworn to serve the nation of Terrell. He leans down at the kneeling general and tells him, "This isn't the welcome I pictured," then makes it crystal clear his only goal is to get an audience with the king. Eisenkraut tilted his head up, flashing reassurance that everything was understood, then told him the message was already delivered to his majesty while throwing in a quick, sincere apology for any insult that might have come off as rude. Once the formalities were done, he shot a sharp look, nodded, and waved Klaus toward the open doors of the keep. Then Klaus felt the little blue dragon peeking over his shoulder, buzzing with nervous excitement as if it couldn't wait to see what came next. From far away, a group watches the whole scene unfold. Alfred squints through a spyglass and finally exhales, smiling because Klaus is safe, while Lin from Shiamo twitches with worry, swearing Klaus is way too loud and impossible to miss. He stares at the far-off castle and grins, thinking this is their chance to move first and stay ahead of his father. Alpha turns to Shuya and demands to know if he's ready to back Prince Rahaku. Then Klaus shows up at the castle, and they snap into action to send the signal. As all those plans finally clicked into place, Sakura Ferris got swallowed by her own thoughts. She couldn't shake the memory of that man from another land, the one who adored his wife but still had plenty of other women, and now she was done standing by while things stayed the same, just like Klaus warned. Shuya met her resolve with the same grim grit, telling her he was praying they could back Prince Rahaku without spilling blood, but if the king dug in, they'd have to keep pushing. Then he swore cold and final. If it ever came to that, he would be the one to take his own father's head, and with that vow hanging in the air, he drove them forward. Right then, inside the grand entrance of Reynolds Castle, a guard's voice boomed as he announced the demon emperor Klaus Finley had arrived. They guided him down a sprawling hallway into a massive audience chamber, and at the far end, one lone figure waited, like a storm on the horizon. A tall man with a bold topknot stepped up, flashed a big grin, and said he was Usraba Kaka from the Reynolds Kingdom. Then he wasted no time praising Klaus for finally calming the holy beast. Usraba Kaka told Klaus that a feast had been set just for him, and urged him to kick back. But Klaus refused, and snapped that he didn't need a banquet. There was something far more important he had to confirm. He scanned the packed court and fired off a sharp question. Did they even realize Sakura Ferris, the guardian of the Blue Dragon, had been surviving in a place where nobody properly saw her or cared for her? He shuts down his speech to the stunt court and declares that for a woman like Sakura, the way they're handling this is exactly what you'd expect from his country. Osrabakaka fires back with logic, insisting that the whole point of protecting her is, basically, a man's duty, and then he challenges Klaus right there as the Demon Lord. So tell me, do you get my core principle? The official's condescending words ignited fury in Klaus's eyes, and horror hit him as he realized they'd hidden his vital companion away just because she's a woman. Osraba Kaka doesn't even flinch. He shrugs and insists it's just how their country does things, and everyone's already accepted it. Then he turns to Klaus and demands, "So, are you really buying that?" With a cold, bored-still stare, he wipes off the official's excuses, snaps his head around, and shouts a totally different name, Prince Rahaku. Right on cue, the grand chamber doors crash open, and Prince Rahaku storms in surrounded by his revenue, and Usrabakatka just stares. totally stunned, as the prince locks eyes with him and declares, "The demon lord's message is finally delivered, just like he was told." He steps up and shoves a thick stack of documents into view, and Rihaku blurts that they're packed with testimonies, investigative reports on Sakura's treatment since she arrived, and even petitions from other women begging to be allowed to work. Then the courtroom explodes, calling for proof and swatting the papers away. The challenge cracks Uzrabakak wide open. His composure shatters and he roars that women are forbearing children, no better than livestock, and they should stay home and stay silent. Rihaku hears it and stares at his father with crushing disappointment, whispering how awful and shameful it is. He jacks his voice up, and his announcement blasts through the hall. He declares that, with the impeachment of Asrabakatka and Rahaka Gilverne, the first prince will finally seize the throne and become the new king of Riddle. Osraba snapped his eyes wide as the punch landed pure, brutal force driving into his father. Rage flooding his face, sweat pouring down, and his mind stuck trying to comprehend the sheer audacity of what just happened. That shock snaps into explosive rage. He roars, "You're a disgrace!" and jabs a trembling finger at them, then orders his royal guard to grab the insolent intruders right now. At the king's command, the guards snapped their blades out in perfect sync, the sharp clang of steel exploding through the air as they clamped into a tight circle around Klaus, Rahaku, and their companions. Klaus, hemmed in on all sides, locks eyes with Rihaku and says cool as ice that since his father struck first, he'll deal with every enemy inside the castle, while Rihaku nods and promises he'll handle the rest. Then they set their meet up for the courtyard. With the plan locked in, Klaus erupts, yelling, "Blue Dragon!" Then slams out an order. Every allied soldier drops into the courtyard, right now. The great beast snaps to attention the moment its master calls, then bursts into the throne room, smashing through the guards and hurling the whole court into wild chaos while Rahaka stares, stunned in awe. When the blue dragon crashes through the building's front, Klaus and Rihako vault onto its back. Osraba Katkas screams behind them, "Wait!" But they're already ripping into the sky, tearing through destruction and rebellion with every beat of its wings. In a brand new courtyard he didn't even recognize, Klaus barked the names of two holy beasts, summoning his allies like a war drum, and Jinbu and Bayako answered as a massive white dragon coiled behind him while a great white tiger snapped into position, both looming before a line of armed soldiers. The crew's true strength explodes into view when the massive turtle, Jinbu, shows up with them, and Bayako rides high on the back of the white tiger, while Serafina sits on top. Then the whole squad turns toward the tarred soldiers, who can only gape in stunned, wordless disbelief. Right in the middle of the soldiers, a goatee-wearing man named Eisenkraut strides out with a forced smile, admitting he never thought he'd live to see something like this while Klaus swings his gaze back, uneasy, sweat beading on his face as the truth hits him. This isn't going to be simple. Eisen's name hits, and the moment he calls himself the shogun of the nation's army, his face hardens. He can't just sit back and watch. Then, speaking straight to Klaus, he gets answered instantly. Klaus lifts a glowing magical crest, and there it is. The names of his abilities, his limit break, and his divine awakening. With a focused stare, Eis quietly asks for a match to test Klaus's power, and his determination hardens by the second, so Klaus locks eyes with him and vows he'll take the challenge. In a massive courtyard, the duel is about to erupt. Klaus and Eisenkraut square off while Terold soldiers ring them in, and Eisen smirks like he already owns the win, certain that with the Demon Emperor backing them, victory's sealed. Suddenly, Klaus bellows and stares at it all with wide-eyed shock, while Eisen snaps, "Stop daydreaming and get to work!" Sparring guards clang and shouts thunder in the background as Eisen blurts out an apology, admitting his nerves won't let him stay calm. Klaus gives a quiet nod and tells him he's feeling the exact same way, and he throws back a hearty laugh at Klaus's way of talking, then declares, "If Klaus keeps moving with me, we'll take the victory. Our win's guaranteed." He keeps going, clocking that Klaus is scared stiff, but it changes nothing. From this moment on, he slams the word comrades like a promise. Klaus just watches, unsettled by how loud and fearless this guy's energy is. Then he presses Klaus. "So, you've got a weapon?" And Klaus answers with a grin, "No, I am the weapon." Eisen's hooked, wondering if he's a martial artist or a sorcerer, so he leans in and dares, "Come on, let's both fight barehanded." Without another word, Klaus's eyes snapped forward then. The next second, the wooden practice weapon came flying, slamming down with brutal force and knocking Klaus completely off guard. Klaus rockets forward with insane speed, his wooden sword smashes into the ground, and a splinter clips him as he dodges, yet he catches it anyway. His opponent's eyes lock on, stunned, because Klaus realizes the truth too. His secret is already spotted in his palm, and he's definitely not a sorcerer. He scrambles for a single opening as the relentless eyes zero in, swinging a wooden sword again and again, driving him back and back. That wooden blade whips through the air and Eisen immediately needles him, asking why he isn't using magic at all. That question throws Klaus off, and then it hits him. Aizen isn't confused. He's trying to shut down every spell before it can even start. Right when he thinks he can react, the flat of the blade slams into his back, and instant shock hits, and a jolt of panic hits him as he realizes he's been cut and blood is pouring. He clutches his chest, stunned by how fast he bounced back because the deep wound is already sealed shut. And yet he still knows there's no pattern in Isen's attacks he can exploit. His opponent clocks the lightning fast healing and smirks, eyes sharp as ever. That's wild healing this fast while fighting. Then he leans in and hammers the assault even harder. He realizes if he keeps forcing his body while it's recovering, it'll snap, and he has to end this fight right now before more injuries pile up. Then a faint magical sigil flickers to life on his chest as he braces for his next move. As Aizen dodges another brutal swing, he snaps that the odds are stacked against him. Then Klaus just slams his hand to the ground, a blazing magic circle unfurling beneath his palm as he growls, "Get ready," for the attack that's coming next. In a blink, his eyes blaze and he unleashes the Thunder God Strike, a lightning-charged gut punch, and right as it lands, Klaus's spell snaps to life, exploding into a brutal wall of jagged eyes that slams the electrified blow head-on. As the thunder of lightning and the snap of ice fade, Klaus drives his palm into the ground, sigils blazing as he erupts with an absolute zero-blood spell, freezing the soil's moisture on the spot. The spell snaps on like a trap. Aizen jerks his gaze downward and freezes in shock when jagged ice locks his feet in place, pinning him instantly, and right then Klaus rockets forward to strike. He blinks across the gap and a crackling sphere of magic snaps into existence in his open palm. Then, with his target pinned, he declares he made it just in time. Klaus drives the power orb straight into Aizen's chest, the hit detonating with brutal force, and with teeth clenched, he snarls that his opponent is finally out cold. That strike slams Aizen backward into the dusty ground, his sword skidding and clattering to a stop beside him, while Klaus looms over him, gasping hard, victory already sealed. From the sidelines, Sakura Ferris stares in total shock, muttering the whole thing over and over, mixing up names and skipping words because she still can't wrap her head around how the duel ended. The shock hits the soldiers around him, and they start rallying on the spot, refusing to fold, declaring they're Reynolds' men, and vowing to fight to the very last breath. Then Klaus slashes through their courage, screaming for them to stop, warning them they're no match for the White Tigers. Before he can finish, Aizen jerks upright, grips his head, and groans about a pounding headache, while Klaus freezes stunned beyond belief, thinking, what kind of monster gets back on their feet that fast? He freezes in disbelief as Eisenkraut stands there, looking fully recovered. And when the warrior turns his back, he spits out that he's already lost the will to keep fighting. He lets out a heavy sigh and stares at the man crumpled at his feet, admitting the gap in power between them was total, while Sakura stands nearby, watching with fear written all over her face. Snapping his eyes back to his enemy, he makes a firm, formal demand, orders his soldiers to stop cold so they can settle this mess peacefully. The house falls silent, stunned by what just happened, and the little white tiger beside him lets out a calm reassurance no one got hurt. Gratitude hits Aizen's face, and he blurts out thanks, then launches into the truth. The Demon Emperor isn't after war. He wants to reshape Terald into a peaceful nation. Klaus can't shake those words because he remembers this whole mess started when Rahaku pushed to reshape the country, claiming it was for the people's good. Aizen's face tightens into deep thought as he keeps going, convinced that a prince strong enough to move the Demon Emperor would forge an incredible new nation. With his mind made up, he whips around to face the Teralt soldiers and thrusts his arm up as a nation of Linult listens. Then he declares his loyalty to Prince Rehaku, swearing to accept him as the new king. He dropped to his knees in the grass and swore his pledge. Before Klaus, he formally stepped forward as Eisenkraut, swore his life away, and pledged his loyalty to Klaus like it was a vow carved in stone. Laos snapped, stunned, asking if Aizen was really truly sure then. Aizen only smiled calmly and confirmed it, and boom, the crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Then he shifted to the next mission and demanded they win the soldiers over, formally asking Klaus to throw his strength behind Prince Rehaku. Meanwhile, Prince Rehaku went full beast mode, training with fierce focus as his blade flashed and carved through one wooden target after another in a relentless flurry. He drove his body past exhaustion, admitting he'd hit his limit, but the memories of his late parents and his real hunger to change the country for everyone kept shoving him forward. Usraba Kaka's harsh shout ripped through his thoughts, demanding silence, mocking the Guardian's business as useless, and sneering that it was pathetic for a woman from Cenifolia to just hide away. He snapped his sharp words at Rahaku, demanding to know if he truly understood the crushing weight of being a Guardian. Then he pivoted to Sakura, clocked her as a member of the fairest Ducle House of Cenifolia, one of the 4 great Ducle houses, and pointed out the blazing divine protection of the great saint that stood with her. Rihaku snaps his gaze to Sakura, his face grim, and warns her that if they mess up right now, they'll be thrown out as helpless, incompetent royals, no second chances. Sakura drops her eyes and finally admits she never realized how bad it was because nobody had ever bothered to tell her. Then his focus snaps to Usrabakaka. Rahaka spits out that he's not asking for forgiveness, but he'll still shield Sakura, even if it means stealing power from Klaus. Anger twists Usrabakaka's face, and he hammers the point that's exactly why Rahaku can never be forgiven. He snarls a guttural curse, yanks a wickedly curved blade into view, and swings it forward, polished steel flashing as it cuts through the air. Cold steel bites into Rahaku's throat as rage flashes in his eyes. Then he snaps that Rahaku's real crime was trusting him and letting him live. Rahaku just stares back, unblinking. Unflinching, Rahaku offers up one quiet, solemn apology, no shaking, no hesitation. He freezes dead still as the threat bears down. Robakaka looms over him, and that blade hangs over him like death itself, relentless and merciless. His calm shatters the moment a memory hits his mother's face, fills his mind, warm and glowing, smiling at him like he's still that little kid. As Sakura watches, worry twisting her face, Rahaku's resolve hardens like steel. His eyes flare with fresh, ruthless purpose as he silently seals an unbreakable vow he will protect this country. He didn't even flinch. Us lunged in with a furious roar, slashing a Katka, and his blade carved the air with a chilling, icy aura, but Reihako just stared through it, his resolve rock solid. A heavy, wet thud cracked through the sudden darkness, and it was the direct price of his stubborn resolve. Snow drifts down as a firework blasts over the towering pagoda, and just like that, the fighting's over. Signal sent. Down on the balcony, Eisenkraut can't stop staring, stunned by the ice magic he's seen, while Klaus quietly weighs every word Prince Rahaku just said. It showcases a brutal new power. Another heal spell erupts, blazing with a brilliant, complex sigil, while Izan Crowd just freezes in disbelief, realizing he's finally watching the Demon Lord's true strength as the blue dragon, trapped in ice before, starts to thaw. Jinbu stays at his side, then snaps his focus to the rest and politely but firmly asks General Aizen and Sakura to come with him. The top tier of Asagoda just stands there as the once-healed blue dragon bursts into the sky, soaring like nothing ever happened while down below. Inside the structure, Asurabakaka stays locked in defeat, still kneeling on the floor. Just like that, the whole crisis gets shut down. Eisenkraut whips around to Prince Rahaku, face grim, and demands to know one thing: did the prince strike down the king? Haku drops the truth. He was swayed by the Demon Lord, and now he finally sees it. The king doesn't care about the country anymore, so Haku apologizes for keeping it quiet for so long. On the floor, the robber Kaka exhales with resignation and tells us the truth: his mother drilled him in ice magic and swordsmanship. But he admits it was bad luck running into Generalizing's razor-sharp skills because he's completely outmatched. With resolve blazing, Rihaku slaps a hand to his heart and vows that starting today, he'll remake the country, and as Klaus watches, he nods right back, promising that as long as the prince's feelings don't waver, neither will his. Eisenkraut clamps down on Rihaku's arm. Eyes burning with resolve, Rihaku demands he follow him as king for the country's future, and Eisen says yes without even blinking. He snaps his focus to Klaus and Sakura and demands they listen. As he lays out his plans for the soldiers, Klaus, still wearing that deadpan look, just tilts his head and asks what he's about to do next. Rihaku admits to Eisen that getting the people to change their beliefs won't be easy, and Eisen nods like he already knows this is going to be a long, brutal grind. Even with the odds stacked against them, Sakura snaps around and says, voice rock solid, that they have to do it, no excuses. Rihaku blurts her name, stunned by how fiercely she cut in. That choice lights a fire in Rihaku. He locks eyes with her, pours out passion in his voice, and demands to know if she'll stand by his side to forge a nation where everyone can live free. Watching it all go down, Klaus beams like the sun and says his journey is finally over. Then he thanks everyone. Rahaka drops into a deep bow, pouring out his gratitude. Taku grabs Klaus' hand and swears solemn and unbreakable that he'll forge a nation where Klaus can finally live free, only asking him to hold on until that day arrives. Everyone in the group watches, stunned as the promise is sealed. He lifts his gaze to the sky, and calm realization washes over his face because the fate of a brand new nation now rests in their hands. He gave it everything as the blue dragon tore through the sky away from the grand pagoda of Terold, and a heavy feeling of this is the end slammed into him. From the streets below, Ouroboros watched them peel away, and with a smug grin he told the others it had been one hell of a battle. As the group kept moving, Alpha leaned in and said, Klaus was downright impressive. She agreed instantly, then pointed out that Klaus was moving even smoother than during their sparring. Klaus caught it, heard it, and just said, that's good to hear. His tiny, draconic buddy sitting on his shoulder burst into speech calling him master and demanding praise for all its hard work. He gave the creature a warm chuckle and rubbed its head, but the moment he did, its familiar cracked open and crumbled into glittering light, while in his other hand that dark crystal thing began to throb. His sudden disappearance sent his companions into panic, and Alfred and Shia both blurted out his name, terrified. Klaus launched himself backward through a burst of raw energy, and instead of crashing down, he landed clean on the fully grown blue dragon that had materialized in a blink. Then he stared at his hands, grinning like he couldn't believe what he'd just become. Elsewhere, Luna, still young, eyes blazing with urgency, gripped another crystalline object and watched a vision rip open the blue dragon with a rider. Right there before her and Nina? She told Nina this was a sacred beast memory, the one born after Cecil's death, and begged her to hold on to it and remember. Cecil, the man in the memory, froze in disbelief when it hit him. Luna and Nina were his and Marin's daughters, and they'd grown so fast it felt unreal. But then his shock curdled into horror as he saw sacred beast Kylan writhing in agony, twisted by Ouroboros' dark influence, and he screamed its name like the world was ending. Luna told them they had to step in for their father, no other option. Then she dropped the question that froze everyone. Cecil's dead, right? Before he could even swallow that thought, Nina snapped into place with grim resolve and declared that Luna was now destined to become the next great saint of Cynifolia. He finally got it no one was going to tell their parents that Ouroboros had been broken, and sealing it from inside their mother was the duty now passed to the next generation, and that crushing inherited mission hit him like a ton of bricks. Nina begged her sister to pass their love to her future husband and kids. Then Luna snapped back, sobbing that she'd never accept the title of Great Saint, and in pure heartbreak she cried out for her older sister. As she recoiled in sorrow, the corrupted Kylan lunged at her, its body twisted and twitching under dark energy. Mina kept shouting her sister's name, her voice breaking with raw desperation. When the beast struck, Luna didn't flinch. She planted herself in the way, slammed her hand onto its head, and unleashed the crushing eternal seal. The seal snapped shut once the marine's fading magic bled away. The corrupted beast started to crumble and dissolve. Out of what was left, Luna's power surged and forged a brand new Kylan, purified, small, and untouched. The vision shattered, and Klaus jerked awake in his bed, choking on air, his chest heaving as that vivid nightmare slammed back into his mind, while his little dragon familiar slept peacefully at the foot of the bed. He jolts awake to chirping birds, spots sunlight blasting through the window, and finds himself sprawled on a bed knowing morning has already arrived, and his companions must have dragged him here. He glances over and spots his tiny crew Kylan, Ouroboros, and the little dragon curled up on the covers beside him. And when a pitcher of water lands on the nightstand, he whispers a soft, grateful thanks to them all. He grabs a sip of water, and his thoughts sprint in circles, sweat dripping down his brow as he tries to make sense of that brutal flood of info his dreams just dumped on it. His mind snapped back to the vision of Luna, and now it hit him hard. This Kylan wasn't Marin's real original companion at all. He was a successor, someone who stepped into Luna's role and inherited the magic needed to wield the sacred sword. The truth was nothing like the story he'd been fed. The sight of his daughters facing that corrupted beast hit him like a hammer. Ouroboros' power was way too monstrous, and even with Kylan at his side, there was no way they'd seal it for good. This duty wasn't a heroic quest at all. It was a repeating nightmare of human sacrifice, generation after generation. He grits his teeth and sees the horrifying loop every time Ouroboros gets revived. The saints are forced to seal it again, only to collapse, letting the next generation step in, doomed to lose again and again, yet never once giving up. Ouroboros slams into his mind like a curse, and hatred surges hot through him. His hand clenches into a fist, fury sparking in his eyes as he swears he'll be the one to finally crush it. Then his focus snaps to the moment, and one sharp question hits him. How much does Selena know? He grills her for answers. Did Selena already know his past when she begged for his help finding Kylan? And now he can't shake the thought that her mom was a saint, too, trapped in the very same heartbreaking loop because the scars of his history, Luna's memory and the real Kylan, slam down on his chest. He storms out of his room, the shock about Kylan still ringing in his head, then sprints down the hall and slams his fist on a door, yelling for Selena. But the room is totally empty. Selena is out there somewhere else, standing still in a thick forest, staring down at the town and the coast beyond. You spot her out there, yelling her name as he tears through the trees. Selena whips around with that knowing smile and tells him to keep his eyes wide open, then confirms he's finally awakened while, right as she talks, the little round device in her hand snaps shut with a click. Far away, another device starts chiming, and Karen Finley stops mid-step in the bright sun, concern creeping across her face as she looks down at the communicator in her hands. The device keeps screaming from the nightstand right beside an empty, perfectly made bed. Then Karen grips it and blurts, "Why in the world hasn't her brother woken up yet?" She clamps the communicator to her chest, eyes squeeze shut as a silent prayer slips out. She can't wait to see Klaus, her beloved, and the cruel countdown to their reunion is closing in fast. Fowl snaps at his companions, fed up to the bone, and orders them, "We're not coming back." He points out that Cinifolia Forest, where they had to slog through, is basically right near Rental, then cuts off his subordinates' worries about the transfer magic tool, declaring he'll shut it down the hard way. The path bursts out of the woods into a clearing, and there it is, ancient stone ruins, half buried under twisted roots that look like they've been chewing on them for centuries. The men stop dead, stunned, and asking what kind of place this could be, and one of them just blurts it out, "Ruins." Just when they think they can dig deeper, two wolf-like beasts with spiked ridges burst from the undergrowth. Growling so hard the clearing shakes unfazed, Fowl turns on them with pure irritation, instantly wondering if they're really trying to challenge him. They don't even get a chance to answer one fierce shout, and Fowl snaps off a tornado-like blaze, whipping up a violent whirlwind that swallows the beasts whole, ripping trees and chunks of earth right out of the ground. The raging vortex crashes straight into the ancient ruins, and the whole place gets torn apart on impact, while his companions, safely back, can only watch as the stone entrance starts cracking and collapsing under the magical assault. The stone crumbles open, and a nasty, chilling presence sweeps through the clearing. Fowl's face goes pale as cold sweat pours down. Eyes bulging with sudden terror, he instantly knows it's deep evil. A presence so wrong it's unlike anything he's ever felt. His companions mirror his panic, all of them locked up in fear, frozen where they stand. Their dread gets instantly confirmed when the shattered doorway bursts open. A roaring torrent of pure dark energy erupts and hammers the ground, and the three men snap around and sprint into the trees for their lives. Far from the forest chaos, Serafina sits at Klaus' bedside and leans in, gently asking where his mother went. Klaus' face twists with pain as he admits both his parents are gone because of his own weakness. His fist tightens and regret chokes his words as he swears their sacrifice is exactly why he can't stop now. As Serafina poured out her thanks, relief washed over her because it was him who finally diagnosed her. But her mind snapped right to the bigger problem. The Kylan's power, secretly hoarded in a chest, and the fact that she hadn't managed to lock it away in time for her homeland. Her expression snapped into iron resolve, then she swore she'd use her scales to make sure Karen got them, shouting her own name, "Selena," like it would lock the decision in place. Hearing that, Klaus sprinted through the woods toward her, eyes bulging as dread hit him like lightning. He shouted for her to reveal the Kylan's real identity, convinced the worst truth was finally coming. She spun around to face him, eyes heavy with grief, and in a single breath she confirmed his worst fears. Yes, he'd cracked it. Because the Kylan's real form is the living embodiment of the saints from generation to generation. She explained that the saints actually offered their own bodies to lock away Demon Lord Ouroboros, and that's how Kylan was born. From that final, brutal sacrifice, Klaus heard it and just froze, stunned into total silence. With a heavy heart, she finally admitted she wanted to walk the very same road. Then a tense, grim silence dropped over them as they kept trudging through the woods. He yanked her to a stop and clamped onto her arm with raw desperation, swearing he'd chosen to save her and he'd never let her ruin her life the way his father did. Then he snapped at her, demanding she understand the agony of being the one left behind. His words hit her like a punch, but she didn't fold, she clenched harder. She snapped back that she'd never choose to be some pillar for everyone, and that Karen would never want that. Her voice climbed with raw emotion as she swore her truest dream was for Karen to be his real family, and she'd make it happen no matter what it cost. Her hand was still locked in his, but the moment the ground started ripping apart, everything shattered. Then a huge, dark, cross-shaped monstrosity blasted up from the earth, yanking Klaus and Serafina off their feet as he shouted her name. When the shaking finally eased, Serafina blew a razor-sharp whistle, and out in the distance, a gigantic column of black energy shot straight up into the sky. Klaus and his companion froze below, mouths open, yelling for Serafina and Karen. Their calls erupted from pure horror, while somewhere else another young woman screamed in alarm as that cold, stone-like curse raced across her arms, petrifying her faster than anyone could react. Watching that distant, dark energy, Klaus ripped out Serafina's name, terror crashing in as he realized he wouldn't reach her in time to stop whatever she was about to unleash. He lunged his hand toward her, shouting for her to wait. Then a brutal, ring-shaped blast of energy exploded from where she stood, smashing him backward through the air. As he was hurled through the air, his mind screamed one brutal question. Was it worth losing Serafina just to save Karen? He clenched his fist, rage and resolve twisting together, and he would not accept that trade. No, he was going to save them both. Meanwhile, Serafina stood before her crew and told them the Kylan had kept the barrier running for generation after generation. But now it was starting to break down, and fast. She flashed them a calm smile and thanked them for everything, then barked one last order, "Throw the Kylan," and sprinted off to deliver it to Karen and Klaus, just as the mythical beast surfaced, cloaked in eerie black flames. Klaus burst through a distant doorway, screaming Karen's name, and when he finally found her, she lay collapsed on the cold stone floor, groaning in pain. Her cursed, scaly pattern had crawled even farther up her arms and legs. As Karen's consciousness slips away, pain crushes her, and Klaus leans in, begging her to look at him. He panics when he feels her awareness fading, and he shouts for her to hang on and push through what's coming next. He slaps a hand to her chest and a glowing magic circle bursts to life. Karen shrieks in brutal agony as raw power surges into her, and he panics when the blue dragon's strength gets siphoned straight into her, fear racing through him. Suddenly, a colossal burst of dark energy detonates nearby, and the shockwave hammers the ground beneath their feet. He and Seraphina whip around in pure shock to the blast's origin, and there, looming before them, are two monstrous shadow beasts clawing through black flames. Seraphina gasps out one terrifying name, Ouroboros. As the corrupted Kylan roars, Seraphina's face hardens, rage and resolve locking in as she clenches her teeth and snaps out, asking just how much longer Ouroboros plans to keep torturing them. Her mind slips back to a grassy field, and she's suddenly calling for her mother, her voice cracking with sorrow as she confesses how long and brutal her journey has been, with nobody by her side. She stands on the monstrous beast's back, staring down as her mother's words hit her. Klaus would save Karen and save the world. She used to dream of that kind of peace, but now her fists tighten and she vows, with steel in her voice, that it's her turn to act. Her tiny dragon familiar darts in and warns her not to be reckless. Time is slipping away. She ignores the plea anyway, and Seraphina quietly begs Klaus to hang on just a little longer. As her world drains to black, Karen's last thought claws at her, the gut-wrenching regret that she wanted to marry Klaus. She tilts her head to Klaus, her voice shaking but steady, and begs him, "Just be happy." His eyes flare wide with pure desperation as he blurts, "Anything for you." Even swearing he'd marry her. He grips her hand hard, but she slips free with a soft tug, and then a complex, magical sigil erupts to life, blazing on her open palm. Their eyes went wide, stunned by the sudden surge of power. "I'll save you now, Klaus," he yells, and hope burns bright in his voice again. Meanwhile, Seraphina squeezes her own monstrous power, and dark, feather-soft energy blasts into the air as she hoists a glowing artifact high above her head, summoning an eternal seal. The moment hits, and a blinding light swallows Klaus and Karen as she rips off a forced magic power restoration, teeth clenched, eyes blazing, pumping her own life force into the spell and daring to risk everything for the people she loves most. Klaus clutches his sister and screams for her to live, his face twisted in pure desperation. Then a blinding light ignites from his hand as he slams it to her chest, unleashing forced magic restoration that fights to bring her back. His eyes go wide when another voice crashes through his mind like a memory he never lived, showing Seraphina snapping at Raktius to get a grip, then demanding answers as she insists Lumiel's plan is wrong. They're the problem, and they have to be driven out of the Holy Land and back into the demon world. Reels of an unfamiliar memory crash through his head, and his mind scrambles to make sense of what he just saw. Then he stares down at Karen's still body, wondering whose memories he's trapped in. He drops to his knees as a dark, sickening aura crawls out of her body, then vanishes into thin air right before his eyes. The sinister pattern on Karen's chest disappears in an instant, gone. Completely gone. Karen lets out a faint groan and Klaus blurts her name, his voice shaking with pure disbelief. Her eyes crack open inch by inch, and dazed confusion washes over her. She looks up, spots her brother, and whispers his name like it's a question she can't stop asking. He lets out a shaky breath of relief, snatches her into a desperate embrace, and sobs her name like it's the only prayer that matters, tears flooding down his face because somehow he actually healed her. She rushes back into the hug, tears spilling down her cheeks, and tells him it's okay, she really did believe he'd heal her. Then she swallows her guilt, apologizes for worrying him, and finishes with the sweetest promise he's the best big brother. With her eyes still shut, soft murmurs spill out and a shy blush blooms on her cheeks as she recalls how badly she wanted to marry Klaus. He just stares, utterly stunned, his face burning as he tries to figure out whether that was really her heart's truth. Panic slams into him like a wave. He whips around and barks at the braided swordswoman that Selena's risking her life to seal Kylan, all to save Karen. She clamps onto his arm and begs him not to go, but he yanks free and demands, "What do you mean?" He yanks himself away, shouting that he has to run after her and stop her, then explains it sure. Karen's curse is gone, but that's not the whole answer. When she clocks his unshakable resolve, the swordswoman's face finally loosens, reluctant, but she gives in. With her nod, Klaus thrusts his fist up and shouts, "Ronald, to trigger the transfer." Elsewhere, in a sun-dappled forest, Seraphina and her two guards face the mythical beast. Kylan, then a massive, shadowy monster, snaps into existence behind them, and the air turns heavy with its presence as Seraphina demands to know what they're doing here. One guard breaks down and screams that sealing this thing is utterly impossible. A shadowy creature hangs over her like a nightmare, but Serafina meets it head-on, voice steady. She says she spotted a black mist, and it looked like it was messing with the seal. Her words hit her guards like a lightning strike, horror spreading across their faces as they realize she's trying to drain Ouroboros of its power. And right then, Klaus and the braided swordswoman burst in while Klaus shouts Selena's name. Klaus's sudden pop-in makes the swordswoman jump, staring at him like, "Why are you here, and why are you calling me Karen?" He doesn't slow down. He barrels past her straight for Serafina, blazing with relief that he made it just in time. He shows up at the exact last second, and he calms a stunned Serafina by saying he's healed her. Everything's finally okay. She barely manages a quiet thank you. Then her eyes snap to Karen, and she grips the swordswoman's arm with a steely hold. Karen whirls around, snapping with fury and worry, then she tears into Serafina, calling her a fool for offering up her own body, and demands she never, ever do it again. She grabs Serafina by the shoulders, face twisted with pain as she snaps that she'll never forgive that reckless move while Serafina can only whip her gaze back, flustered and apologizing. Her rage melts into warmth as she yanks Serafina into a crushing hug, and even with the scolding still on her lips, she whispers a sincere, heartfelt thank you, admitting just how much she truly cares. While Serafina's guards spin around and demand answers from Klaus, one blurts, "What's happening? Her seal won't hold," and the other snaps the truth. Ouroboros' black mist is choking the ritual in place, stopping her from finishing it. Taking command, Klaus roars for the guards to keep driving the barrier's movements, and then he snaps at Serafina to guard Karen. Karen, meanwhile, has one job: pin down the mythical beast Kylan inside that barrier. Everyone locks in and agrees to the plan. Heron snaps into action the second the moment hits, slinging her scorching flame sword dance around her blade as fire surges to face the beast head-on, and Klaus watches, smiling, because she's fully back to herself and fighting with real control. With the danger finally shut down, his eyes lock onto the terrifying Kylan, fresh resolve blazing in his face as he silently swears he'll save the beast too. He stares at the alarm while Serafina and Karen unleash their strikes, only for the mythical beast Kylan to slip out of every hit. Not as a cowardly dodge, but like it's hunting the exact crack in the barrier they've built. The beast snaps up what it's hunting, then hammers through the barrier with a brutal strike while Klaus screams its name in pure desperation. His desperate plea finally gets answered. 3 sacred beasts flare into the sky above the white tiger, Genbu, and the blue dragon. With hope roaring back, he shouts to all of... The blue dragon unleashes a thunderous roar that tears across the field, echoing for miles. Klaus snaps his hand onto Kylan, and a glowing magical sigil blooms on his palm as he starts scanning, feeling the beast's consciousness slip away into black. Kylan gets slammed down and the bond gets ripped apart. He crumples, stumbles back, and Karen and Serafina watch the beast go limp and unconscious when he finally comes to. Klaus jerks in shock, realizing the magic coursing through Kylan is nothing like the magic he sensed in Karen. A dark aura erupts around the unconscious Kylan, and his power starts slamming back into place, forced, violent, and unstoppable. He freezes in place, then spots it. Kylan looks painfully like the blue dragon. Serafina snaps, "So what do we do?" And the blue dragon talks straight to Klaus, warning that his master's power might not be enough. Maybe because his training still isn't cutting it. He listened as the blue dragon warned that something was off. Kylan's magic was still unfinished. The white tiger cut in, sure that once Kylan got his memories back, its power would finally be complete. And right beside him, Karen begged him to get going and save the beast. Meanwhile, Serafina dropped to her knees beside the others and Kylan, worry blazing across her face, and she swore her mother would never lay eyes on the sacred beast like this, broken and drained. Just as her mind started racing, Klaus's voice cut through. He shouted her name, knuckles tightening with pure resolve, swearing he'd be the one to shatter this curse, and then he snapped his head toward his companions and declared he was heading for the city of Thousandless right now. Serafina's guards swore they'd follow, and Karen insisted on tagging along too. Then Klaus turned to the sacred beasts and handed Kylan's care over to them. The blue dragon ordered Jinbu and the white tiger to take over there, and the tiger nodded like, "Got it." With Karen riding behind him, Klaus told the dragon to hold on tight as it started to rise. Across a brutal stretch of desert, Thousandless City glared on the horizon, and streaking straight toward it was a blazing vermilion bird, an epic, fiery avian monster. Suzaku thundered toward them from the ground below, and Alfred and Shia stared in panic. Alfred's breath caught as he gulped at its insane size, sweat sliding down his face. He knew it instantly. Suzaku, the last sacred beast. Then he couldn't help blurt the question, why on earth did it finally show up in their city? Then it hit him. Klaus's crew had once thrown a party in a place just like this. The worry spiked when he remembered Serafina was nowhere to be found. And when the reports screamed about Siku's sudden rampage, he spun toward Shuya and demanded, "All right, what do we do next?" Rucky, a broad-shouldered brute, stood right in front of them as Shia watched too, and then the dark-haired man cut straight to it. They weren't just helping, they were going to be the shield, gripping the ground and refusing to move until the Demon Emperor finally showed up. Rucky snapped into action, spearing forward with his blade to cut through the colossal vermilion bird's bloody chaos, swearing his life to protect this ground while below, Klaus and Karen charged on their tiny dragon, ready to unleash the final sacred beast.